You're not late.
We are good to go, Dane.
Forgot to go ahead.
We're good.
Good evening. I'm going to call this meeting of the Westfield, Washington Township Board of Zoning Appeals to order. And our first action item is note the presence of a quorum. Dane?
Ms. Fortier. Mr. Schmitz.
Yes.
Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
Mr. Buller.
Yes.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Next is consideration of the minutes from the April 12th, 2022 meeting. Board members have had the opportunity to review those minutes. Do we have any questions, comments, concerns, anything to raise? Not seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval of those minutes.
I make a motion that we approve those minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the minutes of April 12th, 2022. Voice vote indicate, positive vote indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And Dan, can you please review the rules and procedures for tonight's meeting?
Yes, for all petitions, tonight's meeting has the following structure. The department will summarize the petition and describe what action, if any, is necessary to be taken. Then the petitioner will be given up to 15 minutes to present to the board. The president will open a public hearing. Individuals will be given 3 minutes to speak. Those representing a group will be given 5 minutes to speak. Only one member of the group will be given 5 minutes to speak. And for efficiency purposes, we ask that those representing a group speak first. The public hearing will be closed when all interested members of the audience have had a chance to be heard and all emails received during the meeting have been provided to board members. The petitioner will then have a chance to respond to comments. The board will follow with any comments, questions, or concerns regarding the petition. Few comments for BZA members and petitioners. Please do not disrupt the proceedings in any way. If you need to have a private discussion, we ask that you please quietly exit the room. Please silence your devices at this time, but if you must answer them, please quietly exit the room. If you are attending in person and wish to speak in regard to a petition scheduled for a public hearing, then please fill out a yellow card. There's some up here and some in the rear of the room. Once the public hearing is opened by the president, please provide us your yellow card as you approach the podium. If you are not attending in person, comments regarding a petition should be emailed to planners@westfield.in.gov with the petition name or number included in the subject line, and those comments will be forwarded to the board members and the petitioner. During your comments, please state your name and address into the microphone for the record. We ask that you not repeat previously stated comments. Your presentation will be timed, and you will be advised when there's approximately 30 seconds remaining. We would like to remind everyone to speak directly into the microphone so your comments can be put onto the record. Thank you.
Thank you. First item of business is docket number 2205 VS 18, 833 Tournament Trail, Star Financial Bank by Sign Art LLC, seeking a variance of development standard to increase the sign area. And Wes Rogers is the staff presenter.
Yes, thank you, President, members of the board. For the record, Weston Rogers with the Community Development Department. The property is located at 833 East Tournament Trail within the Wheeler Landing PUD District. The petitioner requests a variance of development standard to increase the maximum allowable sign area from 1 square foot of sign area per 1 lineal foot of building fronting a public right-of-way to 2.3 square feet per 1 lineal foot of building fronting a public right-of-way. This item does require a public hearing tonight. The item has been properly noticed and advertised. Staff has received no public comments on this item. The petitioner is here tonight and plans to make a brief presentation. Both she and I are available for questions, should you have any. Thank you.
My name is Lisa Argue, and I am with Sign Art, and I am here representing Star Bank with their signage for their new bank location, which is under construction in the Wheeler Landing development. We are proposing 3 signs for this location. 1 wall sign on the north side of the building, 1 wall sign on the south side of the building, and a monument sign also on the south side. So the Wheeler Landing development sits between State Road 32, which is on the south, and Tournament Trail, which runs along the north, which seems to be blocked off there. there's a service road that runs along the east, and along Tournament Trail, there's an entrance into it, and there's another stretch. I don't know, that's not showing up all the way. Roll it down just a little bit. There you go, there you go. So you can see Tournament Trail, and you can see the entrance in, and then their parcel is marked, and there's another service road into the development. So what that did is it blocked off their frontage to use as that building for that service road. So really all they have is the frontage on State Road 32 to base their signage against, which is what, 40, it's 44.8 square feet, which technically is allowable for square footage of signage. What we are requesting is to use, well, our thought process is to use the allowable, what would have been allowed if that frontage went all the way to Tournament Trail and the service road that goes along the east side of the property. So what we're proposing on the south side is a wall sign. I don't know if you can go to the south side elevation, but we have a wall sign. Okay, there you go. That's the south side. That faces 32. It's 12 feet long by 34.2 inches tall. That gives it 34.2 square feet. We feel that it's in proportion to the facade of that building, and it's visible from 32. Also on the south side, we're proposing a monument sign. That sign is 3 by 8, so it's 24 square foot. It's double-sided, so that makes it 48 square foot total. And then if you go to the north side that faces Tournament Trail, we have another set of channel letters that's 9 feet 4 inches tall and 26.5 inches, or long and 26.5 inches tall. And we feel that fits the facade also well, and it's necessary because it needs to be seen by Tournament Trail, the people going through. So we've gone with a little bit extra signage going along 32 because there's a lot of traffic there. It's a really busy district, and we want people to be able to find them. So in a summary, we have one monument sign that's 48 square foot, one wall sign on the south facade that's 34.2 square foot, a wall sign on the north facade that's 20.6 square foot, which gives us a total of 102.8 square feet. What we are requesting is to increase the maximum allowed sign area from 1 lineal foot of building to 2.3 square foot of building frontage. And we're basing that on if you were to take the 32 frontage, the Tournament Trail frontage, and the service road frontage, and add all those together, it would give you 139.2. But what we're requesting is 102.8, so we're well within if you were to use those three calculations for your signage allocation. So everything else is within the standards of the sign ordinance. And is there any questions?
I just had one question, because I didn't pick up on I was wondering about the Tournament Trail frontage and how that wasn't factoring in. So the issue, actually show what you just did on that last map. So basically, your parcel ends right past the ground, past the part.
Right,
Okay.
right. There's a service road that comes in to access other businesses that run
Okay.
in there.
So as a practical matter, you have frontage there, but you don't legally own it, therefore, okay, gotcha.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing on this at 7:10. Do we have any cards on this petition?
We do not.
Okay, I'll give it a minute or so. And, well, anyone in the audience wish to speak on this petition? If so, please step forward. And if not, we will wait about a minute and make sure we don't get any electronic communication. Anything coming in, Dane?
Nothing.
And I will close the public hearing at 7:11. Members of the commission, any questions, comments?
I have a couple questions for staff. So is there not going to be a monument sign on Tournament Trail at all for saying what businesses are on Tournament Trail? Or is it just monument signs on 32?
So the PUD ordinance allows for up to 4 center signs, for lack of a better word, for this whole entire commercial district of the Wheeler Landing PUD. I don't know that it's been determined where those will be located and who will be on them, but individual outlots are permitted 1 monument sign per this PUD, if that helps answer. So, I mean, yes, potentially there will be, it hasn't been proposed yet.
Right. I would think that as more businesses come in, there'll be a sign off of maybe Wheeler or something that says these businesses are located off of Tournament Trail, correct?
Yeah, I think there's potential for that to happen.
But even after those signs would be proposed and constructed, the users would still have the ability to get a monument sign, correct?
Yeah.
Under the,
That's
PUD.
correct. The outlots of this center, which this would be considered one, can have their own individual.
Have there been any other requests for variances of the other businesses that are on Tournament Trail?
For this particular request, no.
Okay. So all the monument signs that are facing 32 are going to be the same, except for stars?
well, Star had the anomaly with the lack of frontage, whereas the other ones go through lots, correct, don't they?
Yeah, I think that is kind of the circumstance here. There's just the lot configuration is probably working to their disadvantage. And if this was a more traditional lot configuration where they had frontage on Tournament Trail and 32, I don't necessarily know that we'd be here.
It doesn't sound like it based on their numbers. And the other lots go straight through, don't they?
That's
Touch
right.
both sides.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Just my only question really is, I would assume that this sign is comparable to the others that are there, like Portillo's, Chick-fil-A, so on and so forth, in terms of size-wise?
I mean, there are parameters for which individual monument signs can be built to, and it's based on the amount of frontage they have. It can be divided among wall, awning, and monument signs, and however big under the maximum restriction of an individual monument sign, they can make it as large as that and reduce wall signs and things like that. But in a vacuum, yes, it's probably relatively comparable to what everyone else is going to do along there, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, anything for the petitioner? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 2205-VS-18833 East Tournament Trail, Star Financial Bank, with the 2 following recommended conditions: that the sign shall be installed in substantial compliance with Exhibits 3, 4, and 5, and number 2, that the petitioner shall record acknowledgement of this approval with the Hamilton County Recorder's Office and return a copy of the recorded instrument to the Community Development Department.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded to approve 2205 VS-05, subject to the staff's 2 stated recommended conditions. Dane, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Buller,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you, and I'll make a motion to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2205 VS-05.
I'll second that.
Motion by myself, seconded by Mr. Bowler to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2205 VS-05. Dane, can you call the roll?
Mr. Buller,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you. Matters approved, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President, just a point of order, just to state that because there are only 3 people present tonight, it probably would be wise to inform the petitioners in the audience that for anything to be approved tonight, it would have to be a unanimous 3-0 vote. So to any petitioners out there tonight, you do have the opportunity to continue to that effect.
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So we only have, it's a 5-member board, takes 3 to have a quorum. 1 member's resigned, one member's sick, so we only have 3 here. So it'll take a unanimous vote for anything that's being considered. Okay, next item on the agenda, 2205 VS15, 14621 Parkhurst Drive. Elizabeth Lair Stetzer seeking a variance of development standard to encroach 6 feet into a 25-foot minimum rear yard setback to accommodate a swimming pool in Centennial subdivision. Mr. Crabtree.
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, Dane Crabtree with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is a variance of development standard request for 14621 Parkhurst Drive, a .27 acre lot in the Centennial South PUD. The petitioner is requesting a variance to encroach 6 feet into the 25-foot minimum rear yard setback to accommodate a swimming pool and deck. This item has been properly noticed and advertised. The department has received no comments, and the HOA has approved of this proposal. The petitioner, Elizabeth Lair Stetzer, is present this evening, though she does not plan to make a presentation. She is available for questions, as am I if there are questions of staff. Thank you.
Thank you. In the absence of a petitioner presentation, I will open the public hearing at 7:17. Do we have any cards?
We do not.
Does anyone in the audience wish to speak on this petition? If so, please approach. I will go ahead and wait another minute or so to make sure we don't get any electronic communication on this. In the absence of any electronic communication, I will close the public hearing at 7:18. And let's see. Actually, if would the petitioner, Mrs. Stetzer, could you approach the? I know you didn't want to make a presentation, but we'll probably have a few questions for you. If you'll just state your name and address for the public record, please.
Elizabeth Stetzer, 14621 Parkhurst Drive in Westfield, Indiana, 46074.
Thank you. Just, number one, was there have you had communication with your neighbors about it? You have some neighbors fairly close to the pool.
Right, yeah, we've talked to the ones at an angle. We've got a few. Yeah.
Okay, well, it wouldn't be south because that's 146, but behind you there?
Yeah, southeast.
Well, southeast. Okay. And obviously, there's no concern voiced tonight. One of the conditions that was recommended by the staff is that the property to be developed in substantial compliance with your site plan that you've presented. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that condition. So if anything changes, then that changes your approval. Your approval would be, if granted, would be subject to that plan that you've submitted. So you understand that condition, right? Great, thank you. Anything else for petitioner? If there's any questions, staff, comments, otherwise, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 2205-VS-15, 14621 Parkhurst Drive with the following conditions. 1, that the property be developed in substantial compliance with the site plan, and 2, that the petitioner shall record an acknowledgement of this approval with the county recorder's office and return a copy of the recorded instrument to the Economic and Community Development Department.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Bowler, seconded by Mr. McCarty to approve 2205 ES15, subject to the 2 staff recommended conditions. Mr. Crabtree, can you call the roll?
Mr. Buller?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, and I'll make a motion to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2205 ES15.
Second.
Motion by myself, seconded by Mr. McCarty to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2205 ES 15. Mr. Crabtree?
Mr. Buller,
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz,
Yes.
Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you.
Have fun with
Thank
the
you.
pool.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, 2205 ES 16, 223 Genesis Drive. Angelica Gaultier-Ross seeking a variance of development standard to encroach 10 feet into the 30-foot minimum rear yard setback to accommodate a swimming pool and deck. And again, Mr. Crabtree is the presenter.
Evening, members of the board. For the record, Dane Crabtree with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is a variance of development standard request for 223 Genesis Drive, a .34 acre lot in the Spring Mill Park subdivision, which is zoned SF2 single family low density. The petitioner is requesting a variance to encroach 10 feet into the 30-foot minimum rear yard setback to accommodate a swimming pool and deck. This item has been properly noticed and advertised. The department has received no comments, and the HOA has approved this proposal. The petitioner, Angelica Gaultier-Ross, is present this evening. They do not plan to make a presentation, but are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. In the absence of a presentation, I will open the public hearing at 7:22. Any cards?
We have no cards.
I will ask once again if anyone in the audience wants to speak to this petition. If so, approach and fill out a card. In the meantime, we'll wait for electronic communication. If you do wish to speak on any of the other matters, go ahead and grab a yellow card either from the front or from the rear of the room and have those filled out in advance. It'll help staff as we move forward. Anything?
Nope.
Oh, close the public hearing at 7:24. And let's see, Ms. Ross, you are here somewhere? If you'll come on up for a second. If you'll state your name and address for the public record, please, then I have some tough questions for you.
Angelica Gaultier Ross at 223 Genesis Drive in Westfield, Indiana, 46074.
Great, thank you. Looks like you back up to a pond, so that helps. It has a minimal impact on neighbors directly behind you. So I just want to make note of that. And then secondly, like the last petitioner, your approval, if granted, would likely be subject to the staff's conditions, one of which is that the property would be developed, you would construct your pool and deck in compliance with the site plan you've submitted. Right. So you're comfortable with that condition, and you recognize that if you change anything, if any changes become necessary for whatever reason, you'd have to work with staff to see if any adjustments could be made or if we'd have to do it all over again.
Absolutely.
Okay, great, thanks. Anything from others? I'll entertain a motion.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve 2205-VS-16, 223 Genesis Drive, with the two following recommended conditions: that the property be developed in substantial compliance with the site plan, Exhibit 3, and 2, that the petitioner shall record acknowledgement of this approval with the county recorder's office and return a copy of the record instrument to the Economic and Community Development Department.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mr. McCarty, seconded by Mr. Bowler to approve 2205 ES 16, subject to staff recommended conditions. Mr. Crabtree, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Buller?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you, and I'll make a motion to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2205 ES 16.
I will second that.
Motion by myself, seconded by Mr. Bowler to adopt staff's findings of fact for the approval of 2205 ES 16. Mr. Crabtree, please call the roll.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Buller?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Motions, or the matters approved, Angelica. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, 2205 VU 08-17281 Joliet Road. CM Boys LLC, Matt Schiller, seeking a variance of use to permit a private athletic training facility on 6.62 acres in an AGSF1 district. And Ryan is the presenter here.
Thank you, President, members of the board. For the record, Ryan Collingwood with the Community Development Department. The project before you this evening is requesting a variance of use to permit a private athletic training facility on the property located at 17281 Joliet Road, sitting on about 6.6 acres. The property is zoned AGSF1, and all adjacent properties are also zoned AGSF1. The item is before you for a public hearing and has been properly noticed and advertised. Staff has received 2 public comments, and both of those have been provided to each member of the board. There have also been 2 additional recommended conditions based off of recent public input and staff discussion, one of them being that the private athletic facility be used in a manner that commercialization or general public use shall be prohibited and only be used in a private manner. And the second being that all previous variances and special exceptions associated with the property's history be rescinded and will no longer be applicable to the property. The petitioner, Matthew Schiller, is here tonight and will provide a brief presentation about the details of the project. He's available for questions, as am I, should you have any for staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Mr. Schiller?
All right. Thank you for having me today, board. I appreciate you allowing me to go over the project. CM Boys is named after my 2 children. They're both in elementary school and they're both boys. And essentially, I want to put a structure onto that land with different sports on it, like a half-court basketball court, 2 batting cages with pitcher's mound, and some weights. And I play some sport. I used to play tennis, but I'm getting old, so I play a sport called pickleball. So that's kind of for my own selfish reasons to get out there and do it. It's not for commercial use. I'm not going to rent it, sell memberships, allow anybody to come in there to run a program. It's really just for my kids to have a place to go, especially in the wintertime where they can play sports. One of my sons is pretty good. He plays up here in Grand Park. He plays a lot of the places, but he needs some extra time and, to be able to go out there and get court time and practice some of these sports. With COVID a couple years ago, it kind of shut down some of the programs he was involved with, and it made it difficult for us to, allow my kids to get involved and really train for something. They're 7 and 11, so I don't know what sport they're going to pick. I didn't start my sport until I was 12, and I became a tennis player. But luckily, at that point in Indianapolis, in that area, there was court time at tennis clubs. Now there's not. So I don't know where they're going to go, but I want to give them the means to dream big and have the opportunity to train and practice and have fun while they're doing it in this environment. So that's all that I have. Yep.
You go ahead and have a seat. We'll have a public hearing, and
Okay.
then you'll have an opportunity to respond if there's anything to respond to. Staff, I did have a few questions before I open the public hearing that I wanted to have clarified. And I appreciate you mentioning that you added a condition for terminating the existing variances and special exceptions. That was one issue. You mentioned that enforcement condition. Could you read that to me? We don't have that in writing, do we?
Yeah, so that's one we added today, just off of recent public input that we got.
Could you read that again, please?
Yeah, so the first new additional recommended condition is that the private athletic facility be used in a manner that commercialization or general public use shall be prohibited and only be used in a private manner.
How would you enforce that? I mean, I only speak for myself, I guess, and we'll get to the public hearing. That to me is the crux of this, because I believe the petitioner and what he wants to do is admirable and be fantastic. If I was his kid, maybe I'd ask to be adopted. It'd be great to have that. But how do we enforce that? So it's something to consider through the public hearing. And I know we've had issues with, and one of the public comments alluded to this, that when we have a standalone accessory building, number one, it's not accessory because it's not accessory to anything. So can someone just construct a barn if they don't have a primary building?
So in this case, as there's no structure on the property right now, this becomes the principal use of the building, which is why
Okay.
it's a variance of use as opposed to like a variance of development standard to, for example, erect an accessory building prior to. So we would often see variances for someone who want to build a barn before their home. They come in later on and
Right.
build that home. Then but in this case, there is no
So it's not a
anticipation of
secondary
that.
accessory structure, it's, okay, I got you.
This would be the principal building and use on the property.
Okay, that makes sense to me. Those clarifications are all I needed, are all I had, so.
And I guess to your point, Mr. President, about the enforcement element, really the condition imposed would really just to garner teeth to the actual request. It would probably be like any other code enforcement complaint based. If there was an influx of traffic on site that became noticeable and suspicious, we would have our code enforcement team investigate it and make sure that that was being abided by.
Okay, great, thank you for the explanations. I will go ahead and open the public hearing on this matter at 7:32. Do we have any cards?
The first one is Julia Hoskins.
Julia Hoskins, 18384 Joliet Road. They say private training facility, so training to me, is there going to be a trainer on site when these kids get older? Is there going to be adult supervision on this site when they're out there? If you look at the planning, it has 2 volleyball courts. That's more than 2 kids. So there's going to be a lot of kids at this facility. It has 2 batting cages. It has a weight room. You know, I foresee private training facility. I can't go there as the general public, but the owner can invite a trainer, a baseball trainer, a volleyball trainer, or whatever, and invite children to come to train with their children, which then makes it a private club, so to speak, which makes it commercial. It's my understanding, I was told by the planning person, that there is no intent to ever build a home here. So there would never be a part of the Jolietville community. That road has no sidewalks, it has no sewers, we have no police out there ever. The traffic is bad as it is to get on 32. We've had this before north of me, trying to get a training facility because of Grand Park. And it's just asking for a lot of different things. It's not zoned for that. It's residential, and it's a residential community, and we would like whoever owns that piece of property to have that, live on that property and take pride and know their neighbors. I ask that it be denied. Thank you.
Jen Smith.
I just go? Okay. My name is Jen Smith. I live at 16941 Joliet Road. And I want to thank staff. They got my letter late in the day today, and they were able to incorporate that, particularly about the previous variances. And because, you know, one becomes worried about the number of potential businesses and buildings that could be stacked on a property if that's not cleaned up. By the same token, I would just say, I would hope that you guys would look at how do you have a sundown clause when you have a petitioner coming in that doesn't own the property, that gets a variance, and within a week later walks away from it and says, no, we're not going to do this, but that variance still exists on the books. That was the case with the Chris Center and the previous variance that was there. So again, thank you to staff for doing that. I also think you did get the letter from me. Thank you. I brought copies just in case. I wasn't sure I'd be here. The second part of that was the address on there. The Chris Center actually used a different address. They had 17319 Joliet Road. On the initial document that shows the agenda here, it was listed as 17821. Now it's 17218. I just would like to make sure that the public was properly noticed, maybe. I'm not, you know, it's the same parcel. The same parcel has been in both for the Chris Center and this one. It's the same parcel in all of the documentation, but I have no idea how contiguous ownership was determined when different addresses were used in all of those instances. And then second, it's really the clarity about the definition of what constitutes personal or private versus commercial. And I provided a list of questions. If you'll just, hopefully you've had a little bit of time and can take some time to read through that and just sort of make your own discernment about what constitutes a business. And I have a lot of examples in there. I think the petitioner was given this too, and he addressed a few of those things. It sort of helped me feel more comfortable that it's not going to be commercial, that it will be that way, and just for personal family use. But that said, it's an important distinction to make, and we're kind of relying on you guys to determine that. You'll see at the end I have a few more suggested restrictions than what they pulled out, and my suggestions, I'd ask you to take a look at that. One of those is I'm still kind of not clear about the whole accessory building thing. You know, I have a couple of bullet points, the first and third one on the restrictions that have to do with making this restricted to being the only accessory building on the property, as in not the only home. And the only other thing that could be built on there would be a single-family home, so that we don't continue to go just like through the Chris Center that could have stacked up more buildings, more uses on this 6-acre piece of property. So I have those in there. If you have a better way of doing that than the restrictions I put in, great, but I put in no other accessory buildings, and then the only other thing that could be built on there would be a single-family home. Beyond that, I think if you have, by and large, got the restrictions, if you look at what I've got and what staff has, I haven't had a chance to review all of the other restrictions that they put in place on there. I would be comfortable approving it with those restrictions in place. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you much.
Yep, thank you.
Any other cards?
Yes, Jenny Kelleher.
Hi, Jenny Kelleher, 3920 West 166th Street, which is right around the corner here. And I echo some of the same concerns that Jen has. If the petitioner is indeed planning this for his boys, that's great. I have friends who have built barns like this on their property, where their home is, that they share with their kids and their kids' friends to practice, and it's great. The only concern that we've had is that in the past, there have been some petitioners in our general area that have proposed a private facility, and then it turns out they're going to have trainers in there, not just for their kids, but for other people, and it's going to be a semi-business. So that's one of the biggest concerns we have. And if the petitioner does not intend to do that, then some of the restrictions that I think that you could put on that would be acceptable to him. You would have to ask him, but if those are, and it's private for his own use, then we welcome you to the neighborhood.
Terry Ruffner.
Hi, good evening, Board. First off, I want to say that 2 years ago, I came before your board because there was a similar situation that they wanted to build this personal area right next to my home that was going to be the same thing, a training facility, which was denied because what they had proposed to what was their plan was totally not what he had in mind. And it seems like to me that since we have got Grand Park, that because these properties are out by us, that they have been sold or trying to be sold, that these people come and think that they're going to be able to just build anything they want. This is a community of people that have pride in their land, have horses, have agriculture. There's farming on these lands, and it's been for generations. But to just come out and not live on the property, my friend had to build on her property, that she wanted just to store her horses on her property and had to build a home there. And I just feel like we've made so many steps forward that in doing this, we're going to make so many steps backwards for Westfield. I mean, I think training should be on a property that someone's going to live there, or on a property that's close to Grand Park that they have any training facility. But people in the country don't want these things to happen to us. And like I said, 2 years ago, I had to come before the board, and we had a lot of people that do not want this out in that area. It just seems to always be a target for, you know, people with money wanting to do something special for their kids, and it doesn't turn out that way. And it turns out for a bigger picture. So, and that's all I have to say.
Address?
Well, it was 18465 Joliet Road.
You say it was?
Yes, I moved because of things like this.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other cards?
We have no other cards.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak to this petition?
We have no electronic
No
communication
electronic?
at the time.
Okay, I will close the public hearing at 7:42. Mr. Schiller, you do have the opportunity to respond to any of the public commentary, so if you wish. No, just speak in the mic is fine. It's got to stay in the public record. So.
Yeah, I saw, I think, a letter that was written earlier today from one of you, and I appreciate it. And, you know, the last thing I want to do is to go into an area and feel like I'm disrespecting anybody who's been there a long time. I haven't. I have 2 boys. I'm a personal injury attorney. I've got 30 employees and 5 offices. I don't have time to teach classes. I have no affiliation with anyone. I'm going to lose money on this. This is not about making money, having a business. This is just to give my boys a chance to be able to do something that they're not going to have the opportunity to do. My boys play at Grand Park. They play down in Indianapolis. They play everywhere. But to be good in a sport, you need to have your own time just to practice. And in Indianapolis, in the Indianapolis area, you know, until last week, the weather's horrible. So you just don't have it inside. But I'm happy to accept any restrictions the board wants to place as to, you know, the only allowed thing on the property besides the structure. And I tried to make the structure appear like a barn, so it will be, you know, similar to what is out there. And I've driven out there to try to make it look appealable without it looking commercial. But the only thing, you know, to be built on there would be a single family home. Maybe someday. I don't plan to move there, but maybe my kids would someday. You know, I don't know. They're little. They're 7 and 11 years old. So I don't know what their plans will be then. But, you know, I'm happy to accept whatever restrictions the board wants to place on me as far as non-commercial use. I'm an attorney. I appreciate the law. I appreciate the rules. And I just want to have a nice place. I talked to the neighbor. There's a house, I think, right behind this property, and I think he has 6 kids, and I told him, listen, you know, I just spoke to him in person. Bring them over, have fun, play in the winter, whatever you guys want to do. And that's how I am really with anyone there. I think there was a thing on supervision. I'll be there. I'm not going to have my kids going in alone or hiring trainers. It's just for my family and my kids' friends. So if they want to, you know, have a 12-year-old birthday party and play half-court basketball, they can. Within the diagram, I think above, someone mentioned volleyball. I don't play volleyball. My kids don't, so I hope there's no volleyball court in there. But that thing to the left should just be a half-court basketball court. So these are just designs from the manufacturer. These aren't from an architect, but this is what I'm planning to do. Inside there, it's just 2 cages. I have 2 boys. I'll probably put in ball machines so they can hit off a ball machine and throw off of a mound. The weight area is not that big of an area. It's probably, I don't know if I had to guess, 30 by 30, so it's not huge. 2 pickleball courts take that amount of size. That's just what they are, and then there's a half-court basketball court. I used to teach tennis for a living. This would not be the place I would go to have any kind of commercial structure. I would probably be down at 5 Seasons in Indianapolis with 10 other people jumping in to try to create a commercial business. This is for my boys, and you know, I hope the board will allow them to have the chance to do this, and I'll be welcoming to the, you know, members, you know, who live in the area. If they have kids or grandkids and want to come over and play, you know, as long as we can supervise them, that would be fine by me too.
Okay. Since you're an attorney, I think that's helpful in the sense that you're going to appreciate that any petition that we would grant would run with the land and would be binding on any future owner. So if you turn around and sell the property, which you have every right to do, then the representation that you made tonight were never heard by that individual. Right. So it's really important that we have everything locked down. Yeah. And at least from my standpoint, if we were to consider this, if I'm to consider this, I guess, the key is going to be the restrictions.
Yep.
And as an attorney, I would suggest, you've heard the public commentary, you've heard some of the concerns, at least of mine, and we'll open up to other members as well, that perhaps you could draft some conditions and table it for a month, come up with some restrictions that work for you, and then
I mean, I won't be able to buy the property in a month, unfortunately. I mean, I think the staff has given me some restrictions or some recommendations, and
okay,
I'm
so
amenable, but yeah.
time doesn't work for
I
you?
haven't bought it yet. It's under contract, and just is kind of one way or the other, you know, at this point. So,
And that time doesn't work in your timetable?
I mean, I'm not the seller, so yeah, I can't.
Okay.
I don't have control to do that.
Yeah, I
by
understand.
any means. You know, if I did, I would, but I don't.
Okay. Any other questions from other members, comments?
I think your concerns are very valid, as well as other ones that we've heard so far. And I think, well, for one, I want to say I think it's unfortunate that Chris Center is no longer going to be here. But as we approved that last year, and the same situation with this is that whatever we approve here is ran with the land, as just Mr. Smith was talking about. So that's where it's very difficult for me, because we don't want, you know, many commercial athletic uses out here. I think what would sweeten the pot for me is if, you know, a house was being built on the property, because then, I mean, it's even more so associated with private use, and I'm all for freedom of use on private land. What's just difficult then, though, is what defines private use, because I think what you're talking about is absolutely fantastic. For you to invest this much into your boys, I mean, awesome. But then where's the line drawn for, okay, private use, but does that also open up to teams, or, you know, whatever teams that they're on, or so on and so forth? So it's just, you know, difficult for me to understand where that fine line is going to be.
I don't want to have anyone coming in to coach teams or anything to that extent. I mean, really, it's just for practice. I played tennis. I hit on a ball machine 4 hours a day. That's how I got pretty good. So, I mean, it's not to allow some third party to come in and make money, or to have 50 cars sitting out there or anything to that extent. This is for my kids mostly. I'm sure they're going to want to have their little buddies running around there out there, and I want to use it too, because I want to play the sport. I'm decent at it still, so I want to be able to invite 3 or 4 people and play. I tried to make a circular driveway so it wouldn't impede on the shared driveway, so there'd be a little room to put a few cars in. But this isn't built to even have vehicles out. You know, to have what you're saying out there, I'd have to have a completely different plan just to get cars in there and just to get people out there. And it would be open and obvious if I were violating, you know, the conditions here to make it commercial use. It would be known in 1 day or in 2 days, and I'd get shut down. So I'm intentionally trying to keep it limited as far as just the entry into the space of what I can use to.
Before you continue, I feel like it's appropriate at this point. Before you continue, I think it's probably appropriate at this point to tell you that a commitment can, in fact, be made that this variance expires on a certain term. So you could just tie it to this particular owner. A commitment may contain terms providing for its own expiration. So if you do not want it to run with the land, if you would want it to be for his use only, and once he sells the land that this variance terminates, that can be.
But then someone else would have to get a variance if they wanted to do the same thing, essentially?
Yes.
I'm fine with
That can be included if that's a concern that you have.
Yeah, I think what the other 2 members of the board have said, you know, are equally weighing on me. And as long as you're not going to have like paid coaches out there, you know, and you know, memberships or something like that. So
there's places in town to do that kind of stuff. I play at
Sure.
some of them, so I know what they're like. And that's not, like I said, I run a law firm. I don't have time to run a facility. I'm going to have a little key fob for us just to go in to have it secure and have cameras so no one breaks in. But there's really not going to be anything in there to steal. So, but no, it's just for us and for our use, you know, and to have fun and to enjoy it. I want my kids to dream big. I want them to have an opportunity, and, you know, and they got to take advantage of it. If
Sure.
you guys are, you know, nice enough to approve it, it's up to them what they want to do. But I hope they then pass this on to their kids. You know, that's my goal, is they keep this in our family for a long time, and it becomes a family thing, and their kids, if they have them someday, can enjoy it as well.
So I'm curious, you have a bathroom here.
Yeah,
Yep. So there's not currently septic or well on?
I went and got something from the Board of Health and had septic, and they told me to put the building, if you go back to like the site map, I think, wherever that's at. Okay, to put it back there because they said then, just something with the field, it's better for it to run there. And they said then, whether it's my kids or if the property gets sold someday, someone could put a house up front there to where, you know, they could live and enjoy the land. And the other reason I put this back here is I don't want to, you know, I don't want to be on the street and some
Sure.
big monstrosity there. I want it to just look like a barn and just to be able to use it, you know,
Right.
for recreational use.
Well, and the fact that the neighbor behind you hasn't
No,
said
yeah,
anything,
he was happy. So
that makes me happy. Of course, you could build a barn-dominium, right? You could,
What'd you say?
A barn-dominium, you could.
I've
put,
heard of
like,
those. Yeah, I
living
just think for
space.
this, I looked at it. I can't afford all that. And I can't afford putting a house on. I mean, if I could, sure. I looked into all that, and I can't. It's beyond what I could do.
Yeah, I guess as a point of clarity, this is a variance of use for this particular use. The zoning would still be AGSF1, so a house could still be built without any need for a variance after this, if this were to be approved.
Beth, what you're talking about with that recommended condition, since he does not own the land yet, would we just say under the petitioner? Or how might we word that to bind it to only him?
Correct, it would be for this petitioner, for this use.
Thank you.
So if his deal otherwise falls apart, the variance would still exist, but it would mean nothing because
This petitioner
the
never owned the
individual doesn't
property.
own the property.
Right,
Okay.
and it has to be in writing and recorded too. It's no different than any other commitment that's made.
But that would be taken care of by the second condition of recording the approval with the
Yes.
recorder, right? Yeah. I just don't think I'm comfortable yet with the restrictions, and it's hard on the fly to come up with something. I don't think, I think it can be, pardon? I think it could be crafted. I just don't have it tonight. Public hearing's already closed. Step to the microphone, please, and state your name and address.
Martin Beckner, we've owned that property for about 10 years. My son lived in that house there. We sold it off to Tom Camp. He basically is in favor of this position here. The problem, it's owned ag. We cash rent it, but it's such a small tract, there's no real use for it. The problem is you can't sell it right now with Tom Kemp back there. It's closed, so we've lost a lot of buyers potentially for it. So the use of the land is prohibited, except right now for something like this, okay? In regard to the care farm, you approved that, but the owner has to, we have to approve those exceptions if we sell it, okay? We never approved the care farm, so there's no special variance on it right now. It's just strictly agriculture. I could go out there tomorrow and build an ag barn, going through your permit process without any variance. It's on SF1 ag. I could put livestock there. That's the way that farm ground works, okay? It is ag. But that's the reason we're not going to do that, and this is a use that makes a lot of sense. It's way back off the road, and the same people objected to, I don't know how close they are, but they objected to the care farm. The care farm, you put so many restrictions on it, we couldn't do it. The owner signed off, wouldn't sign off on it. You restricted the number of animals there to a handful. Didn't make sense building $1 million barn for 5 animals. So that's what happened. On behalf of the owner, this is an excellent idea to have this out there. It's a farm building. It looks like a farm building. Nobody's going to notice it. Thank you.
Staff, for clarification, there was previous variances and special exceptions granted for this property, correct?
But the owner has
Enough.
Okay.
Question?
We never signed it.
That's correct.
We grant the variances. You don't have to sign it.
We do.
What?
Check with your attorneys. We have to.
Was it accepted?
It was
They were approved, correct?
That's right.
And they would be rescinded through this process.
Staff recommendation would be to rescind, if approved as part of the motion for this.
Correct.
Would be to rescind previous variance. And if I could just circle back on the question about enforceability of.
Yes.
Private use. I think just like anything enforcement-wise, I mean, if there were to be that type of condition, it would essentially be the teeth that we would need to perform enforcement. Again, like anything, we're complaint-driven, so if we receive complaints, we would go out and investigate, do our inspections. If deemed to be in violation, we would open up an enforcement matter and process it that way. But this would then be the thing that we could cite in terms of enforcement, would be that condition.
And you think that is sufficiently, it's drafted sufficiently to allow you to have that? I mean, based on the concerns that were voiced and just the nature of this petition, and again, I believe the petitioner. I don't think our problem is, his intentions, I don't think are consistent and are workable. But if anything changes in terms of ownership, whether that is something that does the trick, that gives the petitioner what they would like to do, yet gives us the latitude to protect the interests of the neighbors, which I think are valid, that you have owner occupants that have this type of, ideally, it's an owner occupant that that puts something like this in their barn. That said, an owner occupant could build something like this, and it could be run in a way that's inconsistent with what the petitioner is representing. So there's nothing magical about that, but I understand the concern. And I certainly understand the concern about not having a commercial operation with a lot of people coming and going. No, go ahead.
Just real quick, maybe I don't know, and I don't know all the zoning requirements, but anybody could violate, right? Whether they have a business out of their home, whether someone has a barn on land right now and decides to make it commercial use. What's the difference? If someone has a barn near this area and decides to open up mini Grand Park, whatever they want to do, what's the difference? I guess, there's more fear in me doing this with no house, but what's the difference? They could do that, and then you would still have to come out there and enforce it and shut them down or get a, do something on that end. So it could happen anywhere. There's no way to prevent forever, but I'm okay with whatever you guys suggest. I'm okay with, as long as you don't bind my hands where I could never sell the property again. I'm okay, because I don't want neighbors. I don't want resentment from neighbors. It's not worth me to go there and bring my kids in there if there's resentment or anything like that. And I want to make sure I'm not bothering anyone. And I don't want to be bothered. That's really the main reason with it. I want to have a private thing where I can go with my kids, have fun. They can play dodgeball, kickball. I mean, it's open. There's some open square footage in there, and have a good time, and go with it from there. I don't want to keep bothering you because I think I'm being redundant. But thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Anything further from?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of comfortability, as you were saying, Dave, I don't personally feel comfortable writing said recommendation on, it being tied to you, the petitioner, and so on and so forth. I'd rather staff really vet whatever needs to be done, so that way this is really tightened up, and we don't see a loophole that's missed, and oh my gosh, we have a problem in the future. Yeah, I don't want to be redundant either, so yeah.
So I will say that the staff would be comfortable if the petitioner does not wish this to be tied to him specifically, then we would forego that potential condition. The only thing I would suggest is that we modify the second bullet point there to state that the use is permitted only if operated for personal use unaffiliated to any commercial entity. So it would not be commercial in nature, nor could it be operated by a specific something that is commercially driven. If that makes a difference between what is stated on the screen and what could be presented as a condition.
guess. I mean, to me, that's, he has one of his kids has a team, and he brings in a hitting coach to work with them, and all the parents throw him $10 or whatever. So you could argue that's a violation. I don't know if that's the kind of thing we care about, and I don't think it's anything you'd find out about and be able to enforce. So, you were saying, I would still want the condition that was the one that was read about and if it's tied, do you have an objection? If you have, petitioner, if you have, Mr. Schiller, if you have the objection, the condition that it's granted to you and you only, and the condition, that one, that highlighted one.
I guess it's to me only if I'm gonna sell the land someday, or my kids do someday, right? Maybe we'll just give them the land, or whatever, at some point. Do they have to seek a variance to still have it there, or what do they have to do with that? I guess I don't understand what happens to the building then.
As to a third party, in my opinion, staff can speak to this, but in my opinion, if you're selling to a third party, then you'd make your deal contingent upon them coming in and getting the same variance. And presumably, if everything's worked out well, it'd be no problem. And I wouldn't have any problem with it being binding on, your heirs, but.
I think you put it that way, I'd be comfortable with it.
But I mean.
I don't know who's gonna be sitting here in 20 years, and I'll be too old. I won't be able to do anything by then. So, if it was my heirs, I'd be comfortable with that, because that's probably what's gonna happen someday.
We have seen variances tied to heirs of petitioners.
We
as
have?
well, yes.
Yeah.
They're older, but we have seen that. The variance is not the children.
Yeah, I was going to say, I get it.
I think that would be equitable and fair, and I don't wanna get stuck where I can't give the property to my kids.
So what if we were to have those 4 conditions plus a condition that the variance be granted to the petitioner and his heirs only? And would you take title with do you have a spouse that you take title with? Okay, so your petitioner is, so that condition would be tied to Matt Schiller, not to CM Boys, to further complicate. Yeah, you want to, I get it. However, our condition would be granted to, would be to the LLC. Then you sell the LLC and you've sold the land.
Can't give it to the heirs of an LLC.
No, I know that, but you can't really give it to the petitioner, because the petitioner's the LLC. So he sells the LLC, he's sold the land. He sold the whole ball of wax.
Yes.
So how do we allow him to own it in the LLC?
I could change the operating agreement, give my kids 100% ownership.
Yeah, his kids could become members of the LLC.
That's all.
I get that part of it, but the other thing is, so could any 2 people that are, or any other individual.
Yes.
So the whole granting to an owner is problematic.
The application for this petition was signed by Matthew Schiller, as was the acknowledgement of variance would be signed by Matthew Schiller on behalf of CM Boys LLC when it was recorded.
So it's an individual thing?
I mean, you have to sign off on, as, care of a LLC on the acknowledgement of variance and so forth, so.
Yeah, but he's signing it in his capacity as a member of an LLC,
Sure.
not in his capacity as a person. Right, and I get why he's doing that. As an attorney, he's got malpractice issues. He doesn't want someone to come after his business.
No, I get it. I understand. I'm just trying to accommodate both your objective and ours, to tie it to the petitioner only. But if the petitioner can be sold, unlike an individual, then no, you can't do that. But the other. Well, we could grant it to CM Boys provided the membership is in you and heirs. Does that work?
Except it doesn't prohibit him from having anybody else join the LLC.
Well, we could put majority membership or controlling membership or something. I don't know. Does that, now that we've spent 10 minutes on this particular aspect of it, Jenny, did you have something to holler? Come on up to the mic so we get it on the, get it captured. Yes, please. Thank you.
Seems to be getting very complicated. Jenny Kelleher again. Would it, I believe Mr. Schiller said he wasn't going to build a house there, but there might be a house there. Another condition could be that the only other building on the site would be residential, a home or something. That might make the neighbors and the people more comfortable without getting into who owns it and, I don't know.
Well, the current variance request ties the site plan to substantial compliance, and AGSF 1 permits only, single-family residences and stables and things like that as structures. So if there were to be another structure by right, it would very likely be a house, and only a house anyway.
Right.
Or a church.
Or a church.
Or a school.
Yeah.
But
Or this could become a stable if
Right.
I don't know the answer. I'm just sorry to interject.
That's fine, thank you. Is that worth doing? Council? I mean,
I am getting less comfortable with the idea of it trying to force language in it with respect to his heirs. I understand a concern that he has that he wants his children to be able to use this in 20 years when they're in their mid-20s. But this board before has had variances come before it before when the potential expiration of something is about to happen, and the petitioner says, this has been operating on this facility in this location for 10 years. You've never had a problem with it. Will you extend or re-grant my variance? I don't know why this particular situation is any different. If you want to give it to this LLC for use, then if he decides to deed it to his children someday, then it's no different than they would need to come forward and just request the same variance that's already been in existence. Pending there's been no problems, I don't know why that would ever be an issue. It's not prohibiting him from selling it. And he would have his children would certainly have a very easy time explaining the hardship it would cause them to demolish a building that's been in existence for 20 years and been successful.
And I was going to say on that note, just a couple of meetings ago, we had a petitioner come to us for machine shop on 32, and pretty much the exact same scenario that you laid out. So if down the road, then they were able to present the hardships they would create of needing to demolish said building, then I would see a probability of being approved then as well.
correct. In that case, the variance was tied to the heirs, and they were no longer in possession of that property,
which is
caused
what
the
made
need
it
for the
necessary.
variance.
Right. So you're saying that just leave it at the LLC, and at least that gives us something, and then as long as the other, you've got the other conditions in place. So,
I do, or the board vote to continue this until we can work on proper language. But just to sit here and try to form this in 5 more minutes, I don't think is the best and most efficient use of our time.
well, you wouldn't, it's the use would be what you wouldn't have. So it could be used for a barn, for livestock or whatever, whatever you use a barn for. I understand, but it's a big ask in the community as well, as you can tell from some owners. So we're trying to balance to meet your needs, yet meet the needs of the community.
I think you also know that there's probably appeal rights that they would have. If the decision is arbitrary and capricious, there's appeal rights that they would have.
But do you want a motion today? I would be very amenable to tabling this for a month and allow you to craft some conditions that meet your needs and meet ours. I know you don't speak for the seller necessarily, but I think the seller can grasp the fact that it's not like we've booted you out and said, right. So, okay, I'll make a motion to table 2205 VU08 to a future meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded to table 2205 VU08. Motion by myself, seconded by Mr. McCarty. Staff, can you call the roll, please?
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Mr. Buller?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Item is tabled.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schiller,
Yeah.
and I hope we
Yeah.
see you back.
Yeah, I
Appreciate
hope
your
we see you back.
cooperation, appreciate that.
I think that was a good call.
Yeah. Probably. I'm on the mic. All right, next item on the agenda is actually two petitions, 2204 VU05, 2204 VS14, north of 193rd Street and 700 feet, plus or minus east or west of Centennial Road. Custom Concrete Company is the petitioner, represented by Gordon Byers, seeking variance of use and variance of development standard to permit outdoor storage of gravel and associated materials on 4.85 acres in the AGS F1 district. And I assume this is Dane?
It's me. I'm covering this
Okay.
one, but Mr. Byers, I think, has a request.
Go straight to petitioner.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I apologize. I'm going to be the most unpopular person here, but at the start of the meeting, I could have said this, but I didn't have a chance to talk to my client. I think based upon the sort of the scope of this project and the necessity for the petitioner, as well as probably the concerns of individuals who have corresponded and are here this evening, it seems only reasonable and fair to give it to a full board. As I understand it, you've got to replace somebody and one member's sick. It seems prudent to, as a petitioner, to ask that this be tabled to the June when we have a full board of zoning appeals. This is not a tactic, and I wish I could have said it sooner. The one thing I will volunteer to do, because I know these poor people here came out this evening, it's 85 degrees, and they probably wish they didn't have to drive here. If they want to give me email names or something, I'm happy to talk to them between now and the next meeting and maybe, articulate in a less formal setting some of their concerns and see if they can be addressed. I'm open. If they want to, give me email or some way to get a hold of them to try to schedule a meeting, I can do it at Custom Concrete. I don't know if this facility is available. Kevin, you might throw something at me. But I'm happy to do it at a location to try to listen to what issues they have. And, you can always sometimes address 3 issues, maybe not all. Maybe they don't want to meet with me, but I'm just open to doing that. So.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, does the petitioner have an automatic right to a continuance, or do we need to initiate that, or how do we?
Well, they've already used their automatic continuance prior to this evening, last month. So
we would have to initiate it.
Yep.
I think it's a viable concern. I will make a motion to table these matters, 2204 VU05, 2204 VS14, to a subsequent meeting of this board.
I second that.
Before just quick question, is there any value in holding the public hearing this evening, since there is a room full of people that I think would have gathered here to speak about this?
Sure.
Is that procedurally appropriate?
It is, yes, because the rules actually say that the board should make its decision if you determine that there's not been sufficient evidence on which to make a determination. So that means you need to hear the evidence to determine there's not been sufficient evidence.
Okay.
So
All right.
So then maybe we reset, we do the normal presentations, have the public hearing, and go from there.
Which
Is
would
that-
mean at a subsequent meeting, there would not be a public hearing.
Well,
Correct.
The only danger is we'll have a new member who hasn't heard evidence and another member who hasn't heard evidence. And it seems, I'm happy, I'm a lawyer, I get paid, but I'm happy. It seems prudent to do it at once versus twice because we'd have to present evidence in the record.
Can we,
They can have 2 public hearings. If he wants to re-advertise
We-
everything again, you could do it tonight and hear from the audience members that are here and then do it all again.
you've noticed it for tonight. I
Yes.
guess my sense is with the caveat to anyone in the audience that we're going to have to do this again. And we're going to have a different board, one more member for sure, perhaps 2, exactly as Mr. Byers said. Whatever you say tonight, you'd want said to them the next time. So I guess my suggestion would be is if you cannot be here at the next meeting, then perhaps speak tonight. Otherwise, I would say it makes more sense to speak when we have a more full board. Is that fair enough?
Another thing we could possibly do, is we do often with plan commission items, we could, the staff could compile a exhibit with an issue list, if you will, created from public comments at this meeting, so that those who are present feel that their voice was heard and their concerns are on the issue list, and do it that way too. I have no idea what that is.
But we would have the opportunity at a subsequent meeting to have a second public hearing.
Yep.
That's at our discretion. Okay. Yeah. We don't need no, I'm not saying you don't have a right to speak. I'm saying I need you at the mic if anything's going to be spoken, because it doesn't get captured in the public record. I'm going to go ahead and open a public hearing, but just keep in mind, I do not anticipate any action being taken tonight, but I recognize the fact that you've been here a long time and sacrificed your time and to be here. So to those, particularly those who perhaps wouldn't be here at a subsequent meeting, please approach, and then we can get.
Do you want to hear testimony from the petitioner?
Unless I misunderstood, I understood this evening, if 3 board, which is typical of Board of Zoning Appeals, the petitioner has a right not to proceed and request to be moved to a full board, which is what I'm doing. I'm not trying to be difficult, but it seems like that's a right you expressed early on in the meeting, and I'm trying to take advantage.
I asked if you had that right, and I don't believe he does he?
I think
if he does, we're done.
So according to the rules, it says applicant shall be entitled to 1 postponement or continuance. It's
Which they've had.
You had that. It
Which
sounds
you
like
already
at the last
did.
meeting.
Last month,
But you
correct?
It's not an entitlement. I think the message was stated in the sense that if it's more difficult to get your variance with a 3-person board, but you aren't entitled to it because you've already had it.
Well, with staff's concurrence, we moved it. We moved it. You can call it we moved it from it was filed in April, and we moved it to the May meeting. And then I heard this evening that you said, we only have 3 people here. Petitioners, be aware, you can request a continuance. So That's sort of what I'm doing now. My automatic continuance was sort of consented to with the Westfield staff. We thought it was prudent to move it from April to this May meeting, and not realizing there would be.
We agreed to that, but that doesn't give you an extra. I mean, I don't know that that was ever discussed.
Well,
I mean, we have a quorum. We can go tonight. But I understand your concern, but I guess I have a hard time sending all these people home I'd prefer to do it all in one public hearing later, but they're here, and if somebody wants to speak and won't be here in the next.
I'm not trying to curtail that. If you want the people to come up and speak, I was trying to say they'll have to present their evidence again, it seems like. I'm just trying to help with the record here, because.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. If no action is taken tonight and there's a subsequent hearing, we might as well be starting over then. So I don't necessarily, I want to make the floor available, but be short of, encouraging, just, come on up, everybody. I mean, that's the next time. So I'll open a public hearing. I said that like a question. I didn't mean that. That would be the next step, correct?
I still haven't heard it.
If the petitioner does not wish to provide
we're going to do that
a presentation, as for example with the pool variances earlier,
Yeah.
then we would just move right to the public hearing. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to open a public hearing at 8:23 with the.
Kevin could do the introduction at least
Can
to
we
give
still-
background.
Oh.
Yeah, give some context here. You're
Please.
hearing a public hearing
Please.
without context, if that's okay.
Yeah, I didn't say the time, so let's say I have not opened the public hearing.
We'll do that after I'm done
did.
speaking. You can open it. All right. Yes. So, thank you, members of the board. Good evening. For the record, Kevin Todd with the Community Development Department. The item before you this evening is a proposed variance of use and variance of development standard request for property located at 2814 West 193rd Street. The property is currently zoned AGSF1, agricultural single-family. Surrounding property carries the same zoning designation. So this process began as a code enforcement case after the city received noise and traffic complaints in the area. Upon inspection, it was discovered that subject property is currently being used for outside storage and distribution of gravel, which is not permitted in the AGSF1 district. This enforcement case is currently active with the city, and the petitioner seeking these variances is a procedural option that the landowner has a right to pursue in order to achieve zoning compliance. Further, of course of due process, the BZA is obligated to hear these variance requests and render their decision accordingly, since they have filed an application. A little bit of history on this property. In 1991, the petitioner was granted a variance of use to allow the operation of their business with a condition that the business move from the property within a 10-year time frame. The variance was never renewed, and the petitioner filed for and received a change of zoning request for property located on Oak Ridge Road, with the understanding that the business operations would relocate to that Oak Ridge Road property, and that has happened. So, again, that's kind of the quick history here. This item before you was scheduled for a public hearing this evening. It was properly noticed and advertised for that. Staff has received several public comments, which we can provide to you, I guess, right, this evening? Okay, perfect. We also have received a video clip or two, and if you would like to see those, we think we might be able to share them this evening. If the technology works for that, we can. Okay, well, we can forward it then to your email, and you can see it on your screen. And again, if the board is inclined to approve the variances requested this evening, staff has offered suggested conditions which are more restrictive than the petitioner's proposed conditions listed in Exhibit 3. As we've already met Mr. Byers, he's here this evening representing the property owner. I don't know if you want to hear from him at this point this evening or wait for the next meeting, but if you would like to hear from him, now would be a good time. Thanks.
Thank you. I think my preference would be to open a public hearing solely for the purpose of hearing anyone that does not want to attend any subsequent hearing when we would have at least one, perhaps two more board members. So I will open a public hearing at 8:26 for anyone who would like to speak on this matter this evening. And since we have cards and perhaps some of the people don't wish to speak, I guess I suggest if you could approach if you wish to speak tonight.
My name is Dean Milliken. I'm speaking on my mother's behalf and my behalf. I'm a fourth generation owner of the property, which takes three sides of the property that this is going on or has been going on. My complaint is it's not zoned for commercial. The roads are not made to run them kind of trucks up on. I drove a semi for 33 years. The roads are not made to run semis on. And that there was a reason that they moved to the city of Westfield. There was a reason that they had to move, and they don't need to make a stockpile. So on my behalf, I say it's declined. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak this evening?
My name's Jamie Miner. I live at 19480 Lamong Road. My house is visible and very audible, very, very loud from the 193rd property. When we first moved here in 2014, it was very peaceful, very quiet. And we really didn't have any trouble until early last year. And they tore down the house at the front of the property. And that's when we just started hearing industrial noises around the clock. Didn't think too much of it at first, thought they might just be rebuilding the house. But after being awakened about 4:30 a.m. with my child a few mornings, I did submit an inquiry to code enforcement. And we're surprised to find out that they were not approved. So I did submit a written public comment as well. I work in regulatory compliance, and I found 10 fact-based compliance concerns with this variance request. I'll just speak to a couple that are a little bit more unique. I don't usually public speak, so sorry. Sorry. Going back to the 1991 variance request, again, there were 4 conditions of approval. There was no faith of following those conditions nor enforcement of those conditions. So 2 of those conditions were approval by the health department and the fire department. I did follow up with the health department and received a reply back yesterday stating that there were no approvals for the septic systems on the 5 parcels. I don't even know if there's a bathroom at that location now with the house being torn down. Again, they were asked to move within 10 years. And then what was really surprising on their application now was that they claim that they've been operating this entire time. So that was just not our experience. We haven't seen them operating. We did notice some trucks parked there, thought that those might be used for agricultural use, which is permitted. But I also was like, okay, you've been operating this whole time. What have you been paying in taxes? And so I looked at their tax records from 2021. All 5 parcels are listed as unplotted or residential. They paid about $4,000 in property taxes while adding all of this road usage compared to their Oak Ridge facility, which paid around $98,000 in property taxes last year. What's been really surprising through this process is that they have been, you heard it earlier, permitted to continue to operate. Except for the last 2 weeks, it's been pretty quiet since they posted the sign out front. So I don't understand why we can't vote tonight. There is a quorum. It has already been continued. We obviously object to this. We think that if this was approved, there's other businesses that are established in Westfield, like Shelby Materials, that had to go through the whole approval process recently, would damage the reputation of Westfield, probably set Westfield up for some legal issues, and would definitely damage the reputation of Westfield with our citizens outside of city limits. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak tonight?
Before I speak, I just want to be clear, if I do speak, do I have an opportunity to speak again?
Yes.
Okay. My name's John Gibson. I live at 2836 West 193rd. Milliken's own 3 sides. I own the 4th side. My bedroom, 170 feet away from those clanging trucks. Morning and night, the beeping, the horn honking, the clanging. You hear that loud slamming, that kind of stuff is what I hear in my bedroom every day, 40 to 50 times a day. They sit out there, honk their horns, wanting somebody to load them or unload them. The backup beepers, it's ridiculous. They had a variance 21 years ago that ran out, and now they've started a new operation. This is not a continuation of anything they've been doing. This is a new operation. So I just want, in the board's recommendation, it talks about continuing operations and stuff like that. I just want to make sure you guys understood what was actually happening. This is not existing use. This is new use that they've skirted around the process. As far as they say there's no loss of value, who wants to live next to a construction zone? If you went to look at a house and you heard all that construction like that, I don't know if that is a truck banging, but it sounds a lot like what I hear. If you heard construction, you think, oh, it's temporary, it'll be over. No, this is an ongoing business proposal. I'm going to be living next to construction for as long as I live there. And anybody who comes to look at my house is going to be disappointed and walk away. You cannot tell me this is not affecting my value of my home. As far as their recommendation saying it's going to cause practical difficulties to the current property owner, they just started doing this. They should not have invested anything in this business, this new venture, without getting approval. If there's some loss on their part, that's their own problem because they tried to do it without permission. That's all I have.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak this evening?
I'm Jessica Coonsey. I live at 19201 Centennial Road. This has affected us on our daily lives from 4:30 till 11, 12 o'clock at night. I've got 2 kids. It has woken me up at 5:30 in the morning with the banging, and that the noise back there is nothing compared to what is actually being heard. Constant trucks on the roads. Like, we used to ride our bikes past there because I live around the corner. We have adjoining property. You can't do that. You cannot do that with these trucks blowing down there, semis coming in and out. I mean, my kids get woke up and scared in the process. It sounds like gunshots going off when you're inside your house. I mean, my bedroom's on the far side of the property, and I can hear it in my bedroom with the fan going and the TV on. It's too much. It doesn't need to be out there. We're not an industrial park. They have a spot for that, or they can get another one. But continuing this into another meeting, I mean, you guys approved other people today for their stuff. There's 3 of you. I don't know why we would need to continue something that is literally making all of us miserable on a daily basis. They don't live out there. They don't get to hear how horrible it is. So continuing this and putting us through misery for yet another month, it's just ridiculous. And I say no, absolutely.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak this evening?
Before we close the public hearing, if I may, just real quick, what is preventing us from voting tonight?
You do still have 2 yellow cards if these individuals who haven't spoken who submitted yellow cards would like to speak. Okay.
That's just my question to my fellow board members of what is preventing us from voting tonight, given that the petitioner has already expired their continuance. So really, this is all relying on us if we're giving them the grace to continue to next meeting, or based upon the testimony that we hear tonight from both sides, Are we willing to vote tonight?
The end, I mean, to answer your question, nothing, in the sense that I started to make a motion to table before. That motion would require the approval of the board to table. That motion could be denied and move forward with action. So there's nothing that stops us, correct? With consideration of the petition.
Yeah. I would be, my only concern is I would want to give him an opportunity.
Well, obviously,
He would need an opportunity to be able to speak. I certainly don't want to have a due process issue come up later that he wasn't afforded the opportunity to speak.
Of course. But do you have any thoughts on that issue?
No, I think that there's, there's some people that have issues that need to be addressed tonight, and so we're here. I don't know that tabling is gonna, I don't think it's gonna be.
Did I
worth it.
make that motion to table? Does it need to be acted on?
So one thought I would also have is if a stop work order was requested until the next hearing was held.
Who has authority to grant that? Or who has authority to issue that? The petitioner?
Would you agree to a stop work order? Then that goes out the door. If they're not going to agree to it.
I mean, that's like, there was an enforcement action started. That notice was sent to Joe and Betty Carr. They're 90 years old. Joe's deceased. He died in December. That's where the notice went. The Carrs contacted me. I set up a meeting immediately with the city. Met with Kevin here on 2 occasions and was told the enforcement action would be put in abeyance while we sought these issues of review, these variances. That was suggested. So for
Which is common, I mean, that's common practice for us, right?
So for me
for
to come
clarity.
in and agree to, an injunction without the full knowledge of the client would be,
I understand.
be a bad lawyer.
I guess the position that I'm taking is if your client doesn't have generally the reason why you need a variance is to get permission to do the work to begin with. If you don't have the variance, he doesn't have the permission to do the work. He's doing the work without the variance. So if you would agree, I understand that I'm sorry that your clients aren't here, but.
Yeah, my client's here. There's a non-conforming use issue also in this case that if you want me to present, we can go through that.
No, I'm trying to make this as fair as possible. If you asked for the continuance.
I was responding to what I heard as a general proclamation. A general proclamation that there's 3 board members. And I think this is true everywhere. I've ever been doing this for 35 years. If BZAs have 3 members and it takes unanimous, petitioners have a right to ask that it come back to a full board. Because of evidentiary presentation, they're quasi-judicial, the other members aren't here, they can't hear the evidence, they can't hear the remonstrance. It's almost a denial of due process to proceed this way, but I'm happy to, if you want me, I understood a while ago the motion was for people who weren't going to be here that wanted to present their view, they could. Now we're asking me to agree to a stop work order, and if you want me to present, I'm happy to present, I guess. But we at least got to be fair. I thought the fairest thing is let these people present. If they're not going to be here next time, keep the public hearing open with a full board, and I'll present evidence next time. They can supplement their evidence, and the full board can vote. That seems like the most prudent thing to do.
With all due respect, the fairest thing to do would have been to request that continuance at the beginning of this before everybody sat here for an hour and a half. That probably would have been the fairest thing to do. And you didn't do that, and you acknowledge it.
No,
Don't interrupt me again. It's my turn to speak. You've had every opportunity to speak. That is very rude. I've given you respect. Now you do me. You did not take the opportunity to do that at the beginning of this hearing.
Did you hear
I am
why?
now asking, you came up here and asked for a continuance. The request was to allow for a public hearing for those persons who did not want to attend to again. People have had the right to come up and speak. They will not likely get a right to speak at the next hearing. If you would like another hearing, then
my simple request to you was, will your client agree to a stop work order so that, because he doesn't have the ability to, he shouldn't be doing the work to begin with. That's the whole point of the code enforcement. That's why you're getting the variance. People don't build pools before they come in and ask for permission to build a pool.
Could we let the people with the mics speak?
I guess you must not have heard. I said I apologize to the people here because I did know there were only 3 members, and then I heard the proclamation that you have an opportunity to continue. My client got here at 7:30. I came up and told Kevin, it was not an hour, it was a half hour, and I presented the fact that they were going to request that. If you want to change it, go forward, we can go forward. But I'm just trying to do what I thought was a prudent thing, the suggestion that we could move it to the next meeting when you had a full board. If you don't want to do that, we can proceed this evening.
For clarification, there is no automatic right, or there is no petitioner-initiated right to continue or table or whatever the term would be, correct?
Correct, and it
So
sounds
it
like
has to be initiated by the board.
I don't even think he's requesting it at this point. He's saying that it would be prudent to move it. He's not requesting it be moved.
He did earlier, but he has no.
It sounds like he's not now.
He has no automatic right. I made a motion, there was and there was a second before to table this petition. Motion by myself, seconded by whom? Jeff. I would prefer that we vote on that motion. Dane? Bowler did.
Just a procedural question, are we allowed to do that during the public hearing, or does that need to be closed and then reopened?
If the motion to table is not approved, is not acted on, then we would be moving forward and the petitioner would speak, correct? And I would have the discretion to reopen the public hearing for anyone that had not spoken, correct?
Yes.
That would be how I would anticipate things functioning.
The public hearing?
No.
I don't know that it matters. I think you can vote, and then if you want, I think you can leave the public hearing open. I'm not sure procedurally it matters.
I just wanted that clarification.
I think it may help. My client came forward and said that they would be willing to cease activity at the site until the next full hearing with a full board. So.
You realize you got a lot of eyes and ears out here that are going to report back.
Mr. President, can we clarify the definition of full board in the event that the person who had resigned is not replaced by that time? Can we consider 4 members a full board?
Yeah, I mean, that in reality, it's 3 is a quorum, so we can take action tonight as we have. Sure. So next month, there could be 4 members, there could be 5. There could be an absent member then, and we would have the issue. Of course, there's no guarantee that we would have any more then than we have tonight to take action. So your client is willing to stop work between now and the subsequent hearing?
Yeah, and just to be clear, we're storing pea gravel.
Well, you mentioned that your client was willing to stop activity out there.
Right.
My motion, if I'm going to amend my motion to table, subject to condition that, in reliance on the fact that the petitioner will cease operations at the facility between now and any hearing where action is taken.
Can we define cease all operations? Yeah, we need a timeline and what that means. No trucks, no one on site, literally no personnel on site that is, permitted. Like, that would be very difficult on the fly to come up with potentially.
Well,
or enforce.
I don't think it's realistic to think tomorrow it's going to be that they can do something that quickly. Do you have any suggestions, Mr. Byers?
Just give us 24 hours. It's trucks in and trucks out. There's one person there on a loader that loads the stored pea gravel. That's the use variance, developmental standards variance. We'll stop that. Haul in, haul out. There'll be no hauling in, hauling out. The loader operator will not be there. Just give us 24 hours and we'll stop that
So
activity.
after the workday, May 11th,
Right.
beginning May 12th,
Right.
no activity, no truck activity in and out.
In and out, and no operator to load the truck. We have one operator on site, and trucks bring supply in.
There's no trucks going in and out, there's no need for an operator, right?
Right, right.
So I guess in my mind, when I say no activity, that's what I mean. No truck activity going in and out of the property beginning, today's Tuesday, so Thursday, the 12th of May, until action is taken at a subsequent meeting. That would be my motion to table.
June 14th is the next BZA meeting, so your motion would be that all operations are cease, no truck activity from May 12th until June 14th at a minimum.
Yes. Do we have a second? The alternative to that, if that motion does not pass, then we consider the petition this evening. Do you decline to, tell me if you're not going to second, because then there'll be a vote of no action.
And, well, I do not feel comfortable seconding or motioning anything until the
Okay.
full public hearing is proceeded. Because I just, our job is to decipher between the petitioner as well as those that are affected around said development. And, and so my decision would be then based upon hearing full testimony from both the petitioner and the residents around said development.
I think the idea would be either to hear this at a subsequent meeting, knowing that there's not going to be activity on the site between now and then. So that's the safeguard with tabling. So, and the benefit is you have a full board, or we would have a better opportunity to have greater than 3 people at a subsequent meeting. But in the meantime, the petitioner will not have trucking activity for those dates. By not tabling, we move forward tonight just as we're capable of doing. Do you have a preference?
I'm okay with tabling as long as they cease operations.
Motion's on the floor to table, with the condition that the petitioner will not have trucking activity, will not have activity on that site from Thursday, May 12th, through the next hearing anticipated to be June 14th, I believe.
Yeah, and so I'm okay.
So you'll
I'm okay with seconding that.
Motion by myself, seconded by Mr. Bowler, to table this petition to the June BZA hearing, subject to the requirement that the petitioner cease activity, trucking activity, business activity on that site beginning Thursday, the 12th of May through the June BZA hearing. Can you call the roll, please?
Mr. Bowler?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
No.
Motion is
Okay,
not
motion
tabled.
fails. So the matter's not tabled. We will move forward with the petition this evening. So I would say the best approach is to let petitioners speak, and then I will use my discretion to reopen the public hearing. Make sense? Mr. Byers?
Thanks. Yeah. I called her specifically, and she said she'd make it available. Pam and Rachel. Let's just go to the slides. Let's go. We'll skip the, I talked to staff about giving you a big picture, but I think you're familiar with it. Let's go to the next slide. This is a shot sort of north looking south. That's 193rd Street. This is the site where the Carr family custom concrete started in 1973 at this location. And your zoning ordinance went into play in September of 77. And without going through a lot of the history, they were encouraged, they received a variance here, but they were getting so big, they have so many trucks, they were encouraged to go to their Oak Ridge site and do their development there, which they did. And then this variance expired, and there was some commercial activity carrying on here continuously. I mean, Joe Carr, who passed away in December, started this business in '73 with about 15 trucks, and he gradually increased them and worked out of this location, made his office. Now, today, the Custom Commerce Park, which I would commit to you is the nicest commercial park in Westfield that the Carr family put together. We did that as a PUD, 2003, 2008, moved about 100 trucks. They currently have about 150 employees. Total employees are about 300. When you count subcontractors, they've got about 500. So they're a substantial employer in the area. And the projects they work on, just go to the next slide. This is the site sort of looking from the southwest, looking into the site. The projects they work on are Pulte Homes, Osborne Trails, Lennar, Chatham, Bridgewater, Holiday Farms. They've done most of the residential at Geist and Morris. They've done the Grand Park Event Center, Abbott Labs, commercial buildings. So as you all know, Westfield's undergoing quite a bit of development, and they provide concrete basements, slabs, and they do it to the highest degree. On a residential basis, there's no one finer. I can represent to you that 26 years ago, I met the Carrs when they built my house and did the basement. And they've got the highest marks of residential, and they also do high-end commercial. So this variance, they relocated, and they were encouraged by the town. The town said, Joe, you're putting 10 gallons of water in a 5-gallon bucket out here. You've got to use your Oak Ridge property. And he went in and developed that property and moved all his trucks, apparatus, and these 150 employees to their corporate headquarters on Oak Ridge. So after that, the reason this has come up, they've run into a problem. And in the last 2 years, you all know we've had COVID issues, supply issues, and here's what's happened. Pea gravel was typically purchased. Pea gravel is a component of a residential basement. It goes under the slab, it goes on the sidewalls. The reason it goes in, the reason it's called pea gravel, it allows water to precipitate from the ground through into the drainage system. It's the only type of aggregate product that works on a basement. And it allows the water to flow through into the drainage system, which keeps hydrostatic pressure from collapsing new construction. So as a result of this supply issue, they've been forced. There's just no pea gravel in central Indiana. The supply is short, and the operators have quit producing in the winter. So custom, that's the only component they can use in this process to create these basements, is pea gravel. They can't substitute number 2 rock or 63. It has to be this pea gravel. So they've been forced. They used to store it on Spring Mill and 32. But that site was removed. Now, here's sort of the issue I want to throw out, that getting into the weeds, we've attempted to find another location, and we're in that process completely trying to find another location. Not that we hate Westfield, but we're trying to find another location. We've looked at Sheridan, we've looked at Westfield, We have a realtor here this evening that's sought this out. I've worked with Kevin. I said, Kevin, find me a site. Find me a site. And there's no site in Westfield. And I want to be politically correct. Westfield right now is not making legislative administrative decisions. Just go ahead, give me the next slide if you could. Sorry. This is the site. Go ahead, next one. This is the actual inside. Now this is the pea gravel that we're talking about. These are limestone blocks. This is the pea gravel, 120 by 120. What happens, trucks come in, drop it off here, and then these stone throwing trucks come in and pick it up. There's one loader there, they load the truck goes out. So as a result of this supply issue, they've been forced to stockpile it because they can't buy it. Now, I represent Irving Materials also. And Irving Materials will tell you, and I asked the question, why can't we find pea gravel? It's just that it's not being produced that much, and the supply is just, you know, there's all this construction. If you flew over Hamilton County, Johnson County, any of the interstates, you see all this Amazon concrete structures and homes going up. So they need to bring it in, and they're bringing it in right now from western Indiana. And they're forced because they can't shut down to try to place it somewhere. The staff report even says in your own zoning ordinance, you know, we don't really have a place to stockpile this aggregate. There's nothing in our zoning ordinance that sort of cuts that use clearly. So it would take a PUD. So to give you that background, we think that this location was the prudent thing to do because we ship all our traffic. Give me the next slide if you could. This is the site from an aerial here. This is the area that we're talking about. This is the activity. These are just trailers that have been put in to sort of block the noise, but the activity, okay.
Can the audience please refrain and allow the petitioner to continue? Thank you.
Semis come in, they're loaded by this loader right here, and then they go out. That's the use that we're asking use variance for and the developmental standards. Give me the next one. This is the site plan. Go ahead. This is how we, as trucks go out, before this came up, they keep the traffic going off of the next road to the west is Centennial. They don't use Centennial. They use 193rd and they go to Mule Barn. Now, why is that relevant? Mule Barn is where you've approved legislatively before this latest slowdown. You've approved Shelby and you've approved IMI. So on Mule Barn Road, where these custom concrete trucks work, you've got asphalt plant, concrete plant, two of the big top producers, Shelby and IMI. And the irony is that the cars even have a site on Mule Barn, but they've been told by the city, we can't change the zoning on that now. We think it's prudent to maybe move it there. We'd be happy to do that, but we're in sort of a little limbo here legislatively. So that's why we're coming to you as a BZA and asking for this short-term relief until we find another site or perhaps change the zoning because we'd have to do a PUD on the Mule Barn site. Now, this is not going to make anybody happy, but the reason we have high volume, and I asked the question, what's the worst number of trucks we have in? It's typically, when we're loading that stockpile, we can bring 30 trucks in. The trucks going out are all driven by demand. And the trucks going out typically are those non-tailgate trucks. They're loaded. They go out and they spread the stone. You've seen them, they're called stone slingers or trucks that have conveyor belts built into them. So that's, the trucks bring it in. They're causing some of this noise issue that we're prepared to try to address. And they're slamming these tailgates and they're causing this backup noise that I received this correspondence this afternoon from the staff about some of these concerns about what people have represented here. And that's why we're willing to try to address those things. But our main goal here is to try to stay into operation to supply this area as it grows. The traffic pattern, if you would say we're moving you out of here, the traffic pattern then would be all this truck traffic will go right through the town. We'd have to go somewhere either River Road or somewhere else and bring it right down through the middle of town. Right now, we can go, and we do go, to Mule Barn. We go north to 38, south to 32, 32 to 31. That's our distribution system. And we typically regulate that, we think, on a short-term basis until we find another site. That's a prudent pattern to operate on. Now, you know, this has been going on. The cars started out here 47 years ago. And the cars, I'll represent to you, are some of they're the most committed people. They're upset that these people are concerned, and they're willing to try to address some of those concerns. We've looked in, even though we just heard it this afternoon, we've looked into ways to try to perhaps get rid of the backup OSHA-required noise on the loader. We've thought about we've committed to regulate the hours and completely restrict the hours on the grant of the variance. I think we've suggested maybe 7 to 7 to regulate hours and to put a gate in and lock the gate so we can address. And we're not saying that some of those strange times and noises haven't occurred, but we're willing to stop that as a commitment in this short-term solution to this pea gravel problem. Now, you may say, well, and I asked the question, this pea gravel is actually a supply issue. They can't find it. And if they have to go get it, the irony might be they would go get it on Mule Barn Road. Can you give me the next slide? There's the site again. This is the site we're talking about. There's the operator. There's the pea gravel storage area. Keep going. Keep going. That's looking west. Okay, next. That's looking out the driveway. Next one. And that's looking east. Trucks do not go this direction east. Okay, next. That's the site from the road looking back into it. It's back in that location. This is the site from the west road. This is Centennial looking into the site. So you can see it's reasonably screened from April to October. This is in the activity we've been looking at. It's inside there. Next one. Now, that's it. So the traffic pattern, though, I think is Mule Barn. If you look at Mule Barn, again, you've got the tank farm on 32. You've got Shelby Materials with a concrete asphalt plant. You've got IMI coming in on 10 acres. We've actually tried to do a site there, but we're told by the city that we just can't, it's just too hard to get it rezoned now. Some of the issues with the legislative body. We think that's the appropriate solution, is to go in and get a PUD and find a location. Like the lady said, you know, go through the channels. We would love to go through the channels. But right now we have a short-term problem. And again, we've got land on Mule Barn where we've got land on Mule Barn and we're actively pursuing ground both in Sheridan and in Boone County to try to pull out. Now, the demand, the irony is the areas that we're serving right now from this location, and we're not bringing it through town and taking it down Oak Ridge and through 32, past the schools, are these areas on the west side of 31, these subdivisions. Chatham, Osborne, and all these developments out there. So that's typically what's driving the demand and the reason for our activity. Now, we apologize, but this is not the typical use variance where it's been going on out there for a long time. These letters that went out to Joe and Betty Carr saying the variance expired, I was not involved, and I don't think the main operators, Tim and Tom Carr, and their brother-in-law, who primarily are the principals, they sort of just found out about this last enforcement letter, and that's when I got involved. And we came to Kevin and said, Kevin, find us a spot. Now, Kevin doesn't like to say this, but there's nowhere in Westfield until we change the zoning. We're happy to move, but it's going to take some time. We've got 47 years of gravel at this location, and if we go somewhere else, let's say we go to Sheridan, we've got to annex it, zone it, and put down a gravel base, which we're willing to do, but it's just going to take some time. So versus slamming the door on a 300-employee business that's been a good corporate operator, I don't think you can find a better group of people than the Carr family in Westfield. I noticed as I came in, you know, they've done a lot of work. They put the foundation in right here for the log cabin. So they're experts at what they do. And they have a niche that development drives. And no one likes, I appreciate these people living in the country hearing these noises, but we have a plan that we'd like to be given an opportunity to look into about curtailing the backup on the loader, perhaps coming up with a truck pattern where there's no backup on these trucks, curtailing the hours, and putting a restriction of time. You know, we asked for 5 years, but please don't say, oh, it's 5 years or nothing. If you want to shorten it, it's your discretion to shorten it. You can say, we'll see you in 18 months. We're not likely to renew it again, or we might renew it. But we just need some time to relocate and to find another site to move it. And if it's shut down, then it shuts down the whole business. That's why I'm reluctant to stand up here. But Tom Carr came up and said he's willing to do it. But it shuts down these 300 people, and it shuts down demand. If you're trying to build in the Westfield area and you want a house, you know, you want a house. So with that, I'm happy to respond to questions, but we think it's in the wrong zoning classification, but it has history. It's been going on out there for a long time. It's fired up recently, not out of any clandestine thing, but basically because of this shortage. They have to stockpile it. They can't go buy it. You know, they could call IMI and Shelby and say, hey, give me all the pea gravel you got. But it's just not available. So they're required to get it where they can get it, train car it in, Western Indiana, bring it in and stockpile it. And they were doing that at this Spring Mill 32 location. And everything was kumbaya, except COVID hit, that site went away, and they got caught short. Now, and I say this because—
With all due respect, your time has ended. It's been more than 15 minutes. Okay. Thank you.
Can I finish? The irony is they could put some of this on Oak Ridge, but I don't think we want to put some of this on Oak Ridge next to the Monon. It's a PUD that would allow some of this, but we don't think that's prudent to put this next to the Monon and run traffic through the middle of Westfield. So that's why we're asking in your discretion for a variance and to try to mitigate some of these concerns. Thanks.
Thank you. I am going to open a public hearing at 9:09 for those who have not spoken. Let's start with cards that you have. Dane?
Cindy Tripp.
Hi, my name's Cindy Tripp. I live at 19540 Lamong Road, Sheridan. I've lived on Lamong Road for 50 years. I've lived in the house to the left of me. Before that, my mom built the other house, and so I've been around for the Carrs 40-some years of activity. So, yeah, they have been out there forever. I don't know that they ever got really approval to come, and I know that they were told they had to leave at a certain time, and they never did. And I know that when they finally did, I think it was in 91, and then in 2003 when they did go to Oak Ridge, we were all celebrated. Hallelujah, there's peace, we're all happy, and then they moved back. And it just did happen again. And I think the reason it was more adamant or noticeable was because during the winter, you know, the stone doesn't like to fall out of those trucks, right? So boom, 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 you know, boom, 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 boom. And I wish I had a picture. I know we sent in some videos, but the pea gravel pile, when the snow hit it, was as tall as the trees, which makes sense to the whole stockpiling for the whole community. So me personally, I have 3 dogs, and I had to buy bark collars for all of them because every time the trucks went off, my dogs barked. And I was going insane. Can't talk on the phone, can't do anything. The dogs are barking. So now I get to listen to beep, 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 beep on my dogs too, because they get a warning before they get shocked. So that does happen from like 5:30 in the morning till sometimes 11 o'clock at night. And I totally get it, making $1, and we got things we got to accommodate for, but, and the Cars are a great family. They're very nice. And Custom Concrete does have a good reputation for doing their job well, but as my understanding, their reputation's the Midwest's largest foundation company is behind me making all this noise. So it just baffles me that why they have to come back out to the country. I thought when they went on Oak Ridge, they had a bunch of land. Did they sell that off? I mean, what happened to that? And it seems to me if they were going to go down Oak Ridge, I mean, like it's one block and you're on 31, right? Either way. So that doesn't make sense to me either. I know that it affects me and my family on a daily basis. So that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Mosher.
That's what we hear every day. My name's Matt Mosher. I live at 19516. Every day, that's what we hear. Beep, beep. You heard the gentleman here say Custom Concrete does all these jobs. Yes, great. But if they have another facility, why'd they have to move here? Stockpiling. Your emergency shouldn't have constituted my emergency. My taxes go for the roads out there. I have PTSD. Every time that thing went off, I just retired here recently. My wife was telling me about them slamming. I went to work at 3 in the morning, so I didn't hear it. Now I heard it one morning. I jumped up, got my pistol out of my safe, because I thought someone came in my house. That's how loud it was. I'm sure you live in a city somewhere where these concrete trucks don't go boom, boom next to your house. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any more cards?
No more cards.
Anyone else wish to speak on this petition? Please approach.
Might say, Mr. Smith, that you're sitting in the spot where I got married 51 years ago.
Right here, huh?
Right there. And she's still with me. I'm not a public speaker, so please forgive me. Property values are and will be severely impacted. Oh, my name is Michael King. I'm 19101 Centennial Road, just across the way from what's happening there, and we own the farm on the south side of the road from Custom Concrete's illegal operation. That's been in my wife's family, by the way, for 60 years, probably. Okay, property values are and will be severely impacted. No one wants to hear, or no one wants to buy near a mess of noise, traffic, and dust. Mental health and well-being are absolutely negatively impacted. For 25 years, Custom Concrete made our lives a living hell with all their noise, traffic, dust, etc. in a agricultural SF1 zoning. In late 2021, they brought that living hell back to us, and it appears Westfield is willing to completely ignore the comprehensive plan and yield to pressures to accommodate Custom's quest to maximize their profits on the health, safety, and welfare of the little people. To approve this variance is to say politics and influence matter, not people. To approve this variance is to say that certain Boone County residents can push their will on Hamilton County residents when and where they want. To approve this variance is to say that the new policy allows for certain companies, groups, or individuals to bypass ordinances, build as they wish, and then have the city planners recommend they be allowed to continue for 18 months, since it can't be any worse than it currently is. This is to say that even though residents have suffered for 8 months, suffering another 18 months won't be a problem. The Carrs are not ignorant nor naive people. They knew exactly what they were doing was against even their old variance in 1991 to 2001. They also knew they had agreed to cease all activity at this site as a condition of getting that 10-year variance. They started this activity last fall, we complained last December, and Westfield did nothing to stop them. It has gotten bigger and busier in the months since it was brought to Westfield's attention. That is until the "What's Happening Now" sign went up, and then things got real quiet. I assure you, fellow residents, if this variance passes, all hell will break loose with traffic, trucks, horns, tailgates banging. We will once again be long-term victims of Custom Concrete's quest for even bigger profits at the expense of its neighbors. Storing aggregate is new for Custom Concrete. Up to this point, they waited in line at the pits like everyone else, and they can still do that until Westfield finds an agreeable location for them. To Custom Concrete, we are just unavoidable collateral damage in their quest for even bigger profits.
Sir, I'm sorry, your time has run out. I have to be fair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak?
We have another card, Andy Weaver.
Do you have more after that?
I'm out after this.
Thank you.
Andy Weaver, and I live at 18626 Centennial Road. And I guess some of my comments would go along with the enforcement of what is going on, because that's a little bit of the disappointment. Because I actually have been standing up here asking for a zoning variance before, and had a lot of anxiety about speaking about it and worried that I wouldn't get it. And for the people that were willing to voice their positive and negatives on that issue, there wasn't something that was offending anybody at the time. And for the council to look at Mr. Schiller's private athletic facility that he wants to put up and scrutinize it as heavily as we do, or somebody that has 5 dogs on their property and they're only allowed 3, or a setback, or the lighting downtown on how it fits the not obtrusive lighting on a neighboring property. I mean, these are all necessary things, but when someone comes in and blatantly does disregard the zoning and then begs for permission at council by saying it's not prudent that we move it to somewhere else, I mean, it's kind of a difficult line for the residents that are offended to kind of just take, sitting down. And Mr. Schiller, I mean, I guess if this is a precedent that's set, it would be that he should apply for an agricultural barn and then turn it into a private athletic facility. And then he could come in and ask for rezoning. And I don't think that's a path that any of us want to have the public be taking in what we want to develop as a logical and implied area of Westfield. And I mean, I'll be up here, again, kind of wanting to build another building on my property. And I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I would hate to come up and say, oh, I'm going to make it an agricultural building, and then shift it later and just beg for forgiveness. And at that point, I don't know what enforcement could really be done. And I hope that's not the path that Custom has taken, but it's going to be a decision on the council on how a matter like this is handled and how it will be handled in the future. So that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. No others? No other cards, correct?
No other cards right now, no.
And there was a gentleman that had a card.
If you do have cards, if you would just go ahead and come up and hand it to Kevin, so that way we have you on deck. Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name's Kerry Matney. I live at 2977 West 186th Street. I'm just due south of the custom concrete location. And I'm going to try to read the rest of what Mr. King was reading through, although some of this gets into some medical terms, and I may not pronounce them all right, but I'm sure I can get it done in 2 minutes and 34 seconds. Our community is not being inconvenienced, it's being assaulted. Even open industrial zoning doesn't allow storing of aggregate. During dry days, a cloud of limestone dust drifts across the area every time one of the big trucks enters or exits the drive. Obviously, each truck creates a dust cloud twice per trip, which could add up to 120 limestone dust clouds per day. Add that to a big loader and making dust all day. The dust goes obviously everywhere, over houses, vehicles, boats, anything and everything. But more important, limestone dust contains here's where it gets tricky, crystalline silica, which may cause silicosis or a fibrosis or scarring of the lungs. I'm going to miss that word. Increases the risk of contracting pulmonary tuberculosis. Some studies suggest that repeated inhalation of crystalline silica may cause other adverse health effects, including lung and kidney cancer. Crystalline silica is listed as a Group 1 carcinogen by the IARC and NTP. You cannot help but breathe this dust if the breeze is blowing your way. Having said that, I will qualify what the folks say because I'm an early riser, 3:34, 4:30 in the morning. One of my rituals is to kind of look outside every morning on all corners of my house, and I can see trucks going in and trucks going out. So that, in fact, does happen. And that's all I do have to say. But it is, as the crow flies, they're about a mile from IMI and Shelby Materials. We just don't need any more heavy trucks out there. All done.
Thank you. Next card.
Kim Logan.
My name is Kim Logan. I live at 2727 West 206th Street in Sheridan, Indiana, which is the next street north of this operation. I'm speaking on behalf of my father, Bob Collette, who owns property just next to, east of where this operation is taking place. He owns 24 acres there, and we are generational farmers in this area, much like all the people in this audience today. We have raised our children and grandchildren. Farming is what we do. This area is zoned agricultural and residential. My father's grandsons currently are working on the farm also. We pass these triaxles with farm equipment on these country roads. It's very dangerous, not only for us, but for the drivers of these triaxles. This infrastructure is not set up for this kind of traffic. Whether they're taking it to Mule Barn or not, they have to get to Mule Barn, and they're getting to Mule Barn on these country roads. Thank you.
Thank you. Next card.
Bob Collette. Jennifer Schenkel.
Hello, I'm Jennifer Schenkel. I'm speaking on behalf of Bob Collette. I'm his youngest daughter. As my sister had just mentioned, my father owns the property east. It's 24 acres. It was owned by my grandfather, which he left the legacy to my father, which my father wants to leave the legacy to us and my nephews. So from our standpoint, I just want to, secure the investment that we've made and property owners. And as looking at this property down the road, if we would want to sell it off, right? I mean, who would want to live by an organization like this? So as far as we're concerned, you know, we want to protect our investment and have the opportunity to, and if we want to sell it off later on, that's an option that we have. So thank you.
Thank you. Card?
Dan Schoaf. Could be Miss.
My name is Dan Schoaf. I live at 19490 Lamong. I've been a resident here in that location for about 21 years. Reality is, we all try to do the very best we can as a business. Custom Concrete has never been a good neighbor. When they moved out, we were very, very happy with that. And the renters that they had, or whoever they had, their employees were there, were not good neighbors at that time with large parties. A lot of heavy shooting even late at night, which is fine, we can do that out there. The trucks were always worrisome for me as my children were beginning to drive. The trucks are now getting worse again. We have a lot of bicycle riders there that we can't do those routes anymore. And they were just part of the regular routes. They are not good neighbors. I do not support them as neighbors in any way, shape, or form. Do not want them there at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have no additional cards and no electronic messages.
Great, thank you. I assume no additional speakers from the crowd? Have you filled in a card? You can approach and speak and then fill up a card afterwards.
Hi, I'm Randy Reynolds, 1920 West 193rd Street, just down the road. I'm going to start this in a different way. I am good friends with Joe Carr and Tom. Sorry about that. Tom, I grew up with them, known them all my life, you know. And Joe would stop at my house almost once a week and ask me if there was any problems going on with Custom Concrete when they were there. My mailbox would get knocked down, or, you know, they'd throw trash in my yard. He always took care of that. He went back and took care of it. If there was somebody coming down the road, you know, with no exhaust on in the morning coming to work, I'd call him and he'd be there at 5 o'clock in the morning, you know, to see who that was and follow them to work to take care of the problem. That's what he did for me. You know, I have all respect for him. I work on his cars. I did until the day he died. You know, but this is not right. And I'm asking Tom, as a friend, to stop it. You know, it shouldn't be going on. I mean, it's so loud. We get up at 3:30 every morning. My wife's a nurse. She goes to work. Every time, you know, it's bang, bang, and then our dog starts barking. You know, it's constant. And I just want to say to Tom, you know, out of all these people here that are your friends, that I've been to your church, you know, I've been to your dad has been a good person to me as a Christian, you know, and I mean, that man had a handshake that wouldn't stop. But, you know, you can't be doing this, Tom. You know, I mean, we can't, it's too dangerous. When the trucks come out of there, they don't turn right. They turn left. And I go down there and try to stop them from turning left. They go by my house. And now, since they know it's me that's trying to keep them from turning left, they use their Jake brake in front of my house. You know, and that's my own fault for doing that. But it's the same trucks every morning at 6 o'clock that turn out of there and turn left instead of right and go by my house, you know, and the same trucks that are the stone slinger trucks are not going right because they're going left because they're going to Osborne's. Why would they go right? They're going left and they're going by my house. You know, they're not speeding.
They're not, you know, but when two of them meet on the road, it's terrible. And there's 40 to 50, 60 trucks a day. I mean, 40 this way, 40 back. You know, it's a mess, you know? So, sorry about that. But I just want Tom to know that we would like to stop it. You know, as a Christian
Thank you. I believe that was the last ones willing to speak, so 9:31, I'll close the public hearing. Petitioners, any response? Mr. Byers?
Well, just that this issue in connection with loader backup alarms and slamming tailgates, we wanted to address. I mean, we're inclined to try to put a camera in the loader to cut out the backup noise of that, create a mechanism for the trucks to come in to where there's no backing up. So that would eliminate these backups. And we're also prepared to put signage up and make the operator of that piece of equipment preclude from loading and unloading trucks that slam their tailgates. We think we can, not absolutely stop it, but we think we can substantially mitigate the slamming of tailgates. We appreciate the noise that it carries from a tailgate slamming, and we appreciate the backup alarms that we've heard about. So we would commit to cutting back on the loader noise, coming with an alternative to the OSHA standard and trying to create a traffic pattern. And most importantly, we're trying to do this short term until we can relocate. Now, I appreciate patience of worn thin, but we got caught in this shortage, and we think that by going to Mule Barn, which is with these hours and these restrictions, that an 18-month short-term, 2-year short-term would be prudent to allow us to find another site to locate. We might find one, our realtors here, we might find one in the next 60 days, which would be great. And one reason, I hate to say this, but one reason we continued this, my automatic continuance that I had to sort of eat early on, was we thought we had a site committed to. We were going to come in and potentially say we need 90 days because we've got another site. It's going to have to be a PUD in some form of utility. So we're actively looking for a site. We're not long-term in this location. I think all these concerns are going to go away because we're going to be there short-term and go somewhere else. And this will be reverted to its ag location, and Custom will operate out of its Oak Ridge. It's just, the honest truth is there's no other location in Westfield, and we're having trouble finding a location for this storage. The ag operators don't have the product. That's where the zoning is to store it. So we're trying to create a use variance for this short-term storage. It's not an extraction activity, it's a storage activity. It generates truck traffic, but we're trying to curtail that, limit the hours, mitigate some of these concerns for a short-term basis. That's all we're asking is your discretion. Short-term, you can make it a year, but we're just trying to get short-term until we can get somewhere else. And that's why I literally continued it from the April hearing that I filed for to the May hearing, thinking we almost had a site tied up in Sheridan, but it had 1031 issues and all kinds of, so we weren't able to commit to it. So that's our request. We appreciate the concerns. We're willing to address it. With staff's assistance, we think we can curtail a lot of these noises, but there is a demand, and these trucks are going to be serving these locations, either off of Mule Barn or River Road, through these locations. So with that, we ask your discretion to give us a short-term use variance to allow us to relocate, move our business.
Thank you. Comments from board members?
I guess I'm going to have to go first since I was the one to keep us all here tonight. I think there's no question this is a very difficult matter. Based upon the petitioner is 100% correct, shortages everywhere, and Westfield, we keep on building. We've had product approved for many, many years, hence meaning there needs pea gravel and other concrete uses. On the emotional aspect of that, again, I 100% agree with the neighbors that spoke tonight. It's no secret that this is the area that I grew up in. The house I grew up in is just probably less than a mile away from here. My bus route is on this road from when I was a kid. I'm very familiar with the area. Granted, I am no longer affected in the way that you all are, and again, I 100% associate though with the health issues that were mentioned, the noise, so on and so forth. I wouldn't want to live next to that. And something that I've learned being on this board over the past 2 years is that if there is a hardship being created, a further hardship for the neighbors, whether it's a pool or something like this, then that's something we heavily have to take into consideration, is the hardship that's being created. On the other hand, though, we also have to take into consideration the hardship that is bestowed upon the property owner as well. So that's what makes this so difficult. Do I believe that this is an appropriate use for the land? Absolutely not. But there is that scarcity of property available being in Westfield, and of course we want to 100% make sure we are being good neighbors to the businesses that have called Westfield home for longer than I've been alive. With the custom concrete property that is owned in the Westfield Business Park next to the Monon, that area I think is more accessible to the Oak Ridge Road and getting onto 32, and I think the infrastructure is there for it as opposed to using Mule Barn Road as it currently sits. But then you open up another can of worms of if you're storing pea gravel, whatever it is, well then you are creating the same health concerns for those that are using the Monon and just the other neighbors in the area as well. I know I'm probably just spinning the wheel here and being a little redundant, but that's why this is just so difficult. And would I see a long-term use for this? Absolutely not. So whatever we can agree to as a board tonight, that might be a feasible use to allow you to find new land, as well as it, again, not being long-term, and we make sure we're being good neighbors here. That is my always number one concern, is being good neighbor. But the reason why I want to make action tonight as opposed to kicking the can down the road till next month or whenever is I don't think that solves any problems. I don't want to be complacent. I want to be better. So if we're able to address something tonight, that way it's on the books, and just in terms of anxiety, those in the audience, or again, those that are affected, are not constantly every night worrying, when is this going to go away? When is this going to go away? We get something, I was going to say get something concrete, but I'm sorry. But just get something in the books, so that way we can just have a peace of mind. So I'll shut up for now and see what my other board members have to say. Thank you.
I think it would be different if that property was being allowed to be used in its current fashion today. And I respect you, Cars. You've done a great job, provided great jobs to Westfield, but that property hasn't been able to be used in that manner. And I understand you saw a need, you had the property, you used it, right? And so I get it. It is what it is, but you got people all around you that are complaining, and you're just not going to be able to use that property anymore for what it's currently being used for. And that's the gist of it, you know? And I'm sorry, you're going to have to find some other place. That's my opinion.
I wanted to start by expressing some appreciation for Custom Concrete. I don't know much about the company, but I've known of them and of the Carr family. And they certainly have a beautiful facility by the Monon and have been good benefactors of the community. I believe they dedicated ground on their site to the Monon Trail, equipment along the Monon. So I don't want anything that happens tonight, at least from my perspective, to conflict with that, in the sense that I respect the company and the things they've done as an employer in this community. It's just ultimately, you know, you had a site that had a variance to permit perhaps this kind of activity, whatever it was, between 91 and 01, and that had a condition that the business would move from the present location in a maximum of 10 years. That didn't happen, I don't think. I think when the PUD was approved in 03, there you had your second location. So it seems to me that, you know, it should have moved there at that time. And for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And again, I'm sympathetic to all the supply. Everybody knows there's supply. Everything you're saying about having problems with pea gravel, I believe every word of it. It's just, this is a terrible location for it. And you know, you had a property that you owned. You recognized a need. You tried to fulfill that need. You know, the one issue about, you know, your council has said, you know, some issues, some potential mitigation efforts with turning off the beepers and doing something about the trucks. I mean, you know, perhaps if this would have been recognized at the time you ramped up your activity there 2 years ago, didn't drive these neighbors crazy for 2 years, perhaps that would have helped. But at this point, I think you've got an issue. You know, I don't think we can find the required findings that's necessary for us to approve this, from my perspective. And I think I'll leave it at that. And I'll open the floor for any motions.
Not to continue the discussion, but, and I know it's always difficult playing devil's advocate, but what would be a reasonable time frame to be able to move everything off of property? Because obviously, whether we vote yes or no for this, still activity has to commence in order to move whatever is there away. So what would be a feasible time frame? Maybe that's too much to ask, if, you know, trying to meet in the middle, as opposed to saying yes or no. But again, I just want to make sure we're being good stewards of the community to a business that's been positive, good neighbor to the community, so.
I thought this, you know, we're lawyers, we talk in circles sometimes, but the activity of stopping trucking in and just trucking out for demand, the pea gravel, they think that could be done in like 90 days to truck out the supply that's there. We've got to take it somewhere, and to take it to job sites, 90 days. There are a couple semi-trailers that I don't know that the department, there's no activity, they're just parked there. We don't have a location, but we think 90 days substantially could move all the commercial activity out of there from, you know, tomorrow, let's say. As far as trucking it out, we've got to get it out of there. So that's the guesstimate of you saw the stockpile and the amount in there. So, and I think our goal there is to probably take it to job sites and take it, maybe we can, I don't know what. I think take it to job sites, so 90 days.
Again, that's just my concern of getting this out of there. So I don't know what we can do on our end, because of obviously don't want to permit any more use because it's not already permitted, but what is there needs to be moved. I don't know in any recommendations that we can make to allow that to happen. It's just, getting some sort of commitment from the petitioner of when that could be gone. So really, I'm looking at my fellow board members as well as staff of how do we handle that.
Staff and council, could you speak to that issue? I was going to ask if I presume you've had experience in enforcement actions when a business is ordered to cease and desist. Presumably, it doesn't happen overnight. There's a period of time to wind up their operations. How is that typically done? Pardon? Is there a...
Generally, when I send a letter, it's to cease and desist within 30 days.
But what if they
generally,
have,
but it-
in this situation, if you have gravel and it really isn't over till it's removed?
I understand. I don't know that that's grounded in anything. I think you can probably use any time frame that you believe is reasonable.
Okay, as a part of a motion?
As a condition to the approval, or the deny, as a condition.
Okay. So it would be appropriate to have for the sake of illustration, to make a motion to deny the petition with a condition that operations be wound up within 90 days?
Otherwise, the city will seek to enforce. The city will continue with the code enforcement.
Okay.
And that's where my mind was heading, because it really then after, it seems where we're going of not approving said petition, it's up to staff for enforcement. So if we add, which I know it's unusual, adding a condition for a denial, but just then that way staff has a time frame of, checking in on them and enforcing what needs to be done.
Would you want a time frame dictated in that requirement? Because obviously the enforcement can do as enforcement wishes in terms of time frame, correct? You want us to stay out of it?
Well, we're one and the same.
If we keep it out of the motion,
I appreciate the dilemma, and you can go ahead and make your motion to turn it down. We'll agree with staff here. Kevin and I have talked about this issue. We'll agree to cease all operations within 90 days, or he can light up his enforcement action. We'll voluntarily...
which could happen anyway.
Yeah. We'll voluntarily commit to do that. So we'll keep it out of your motion and keep your record clean.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion. Do we need separate activity on these?
No, because if the use is denied, the development standard doesn't apply.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion on these petitions.
I'll make a motion to deny 2204-VU-05 and 2204-VS-14 north of 193rd Street, approximately 700 feet of east of Centennial Road, custom concrete.
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. McCarty, seconded by Mr. Bowler to deny 2204-VU-05 and 2204-VS-14. Call the roll, please.
All right. Mr. Bowler?
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz?
Yes.
Mr. McCarty?
Yes.
Motion is denied.
Now I'll make a motion to table consideration of findings of fact until the next meeting of this board.
I'll second that.
Motion by myself, seconded by Mr. Bowler to table findings of fact consideration until the June meeting of this board. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Buller.
Yes.
Mr. Schmitz.
Yes.
Mr. McCarty.
Yes.
Findings of fact have been tabled.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your patience tonight and for your participation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's wrap this thing up. That is it, right? Yeah. Well, I just got to do plan commission liaison. Nah. Victor, how about defer? Let's defer. And do we have a report from the Community Development Department? Or is that Kevin?
The only report I would state is, unfortunately, Rachel Remmenschneider has left the department.
Yeah, let's just wait. We'll get
Okay.
She has? No. Where'd she go?
back home. Chicago.
So these folks are the figureheads and you folks.
Hey, we need to,
Well,
if y'all could clear, we need to finish our meeting, so if we could clear the whatever the room is.
clear the pulpit.
We need to finish our last few items. It's nice outside at least. Okay, we're gonna defer the Plan Commission liaison report until next month. Community Development Department?
Yeah, the only point of business, Rachel Remmenschneider has moved on to a community in the Chicagoland area to be closer to her family, so we're currently seeking another experienced associate planner or senior planner.
Is she gone already? Has she already left?
Yep.
Okay, she was here last Monday, so. Okay, that's it for the agenda. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Sorry. Oh, wait, no, you just went through your comments. Never mind. It's late.
Are
Yes.
you going to second that? Thank you.
Moved and seconded to adjourn at 9:53. All those in favor, voice vote indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.